Okay, welcome to another live commentary on Hetman Strikes Back Daily Boxing News. First up, on this Usyk Dubois rematch show, we've got the Lawrence Okolie Kevin Lerena fight about to kick off. The participants are in the ring. If my stream is a little behind yours, please be advised of that. And if you want to sync my commentary with what you're watching, then adjust your stream accordingly. Shout out to everybody in the live chat. There are lots of people, the closer we get to this fight, picking Daniel Dubois to win. I'm talking about the main event, of course. Somebody in the chat there said they had a dream that Dubois won by knockout. We'll find out in what, just over an hour or so? Shout out to the place. Big up. For those who haven't heard my prediction, I'm picking Oleksandr Usyk on points. Somebody else has also got him on points there. They're saying UD 117, 111 to Usyk. I got Usyk on points, but I think it's going to be maybe a rough fight for him. Shay's got Usyk by round 11 TKO. So yeah, former cruiserweight Lawrence Okolie. Did I just say two cruiserweights? Well, these are two former cruiserweights in Lawrence Okolie and Kevin Lerena. Also two former bridgerweights. Yeah, Lawrence Okolie, the same weight for this fight that he was in his last fight, but to me, his body composition looks a bit different. He's gained some muscle since his last fight and lost a little bit of fat. There's still some flesh around his waist, there's no doubt about it. He's not as lean, obviously, as he was as a cruiserweight. There's more body fat on him now. But yeah, there's definitely a lot more muscle on those shoulders and the chest and stuff like that than we saw in his last fight, which was also at heavyweight. So let's see what Lawrence Okolie can do here. Kevin Lerena is a very aggressive fighter normally. And if Lawrence Okolie cannot discourage him from getting on the inside, will we see a return to the old octopus version of Lawrence Okolie that we saw so many times as a cruiserweight? Because Okolie historically has been a guy who doesn't particularly like when his opponents get close. He seems to get anxious and just hold on. So, yeah, here we go. The fight about to start. I'll tell you when the opening bell is for me on my stream. Let's see how the styles gel. There's the opening bell. Okolie comes out, using the jab into the body, jab into the head. Lerena, who's quite experienced at this point, been in with the likes of Justice Hooney, Daniel Dubois, and so on, is obviously looking for a way to close that gap. Okolie trying to take center ring, but Lerena at the moment is pushing him out of the center of the ring by not backing off. So let's see. Okay, there's the nearly a first clinch from Okolie. He didn't quite hold on there. Jab to the body from Kevin Lerena. Okolie has always had kind of a, let's just say, awkward physique. But with the extra weight, his physique looks even more awkward. He looks very ungainly as he moves around the ring. But if he can fight effectively, he can fight effectively, right? It doesn't matter what he looks like, but it's just kind of striking how... Oh, good shots there from Lawrence Okolie. Then he holds on the inside. First clinch. Again, Okolie trying to measure with a jab. Lerena looks very calm. Nothing seems to have bothered Lerena yet, unless he's got a really good poker face, because Lawrence Okolie can really punch with that backhand. Okolie holding and hitting there. Let's hope this doesn't get too messy because, as I said before the opening bell, when Okolie can't discourage you from closing down the range, from closing the distance, that's when he starts to hold. And obviously discouraging you with his punches is what he's aiming for. He's throwing that straight right hand down the pipe there, Lawrence Okolie. But it hasn't really landed flush yet on Kevin Lerena. I think a lot of them shots have been hitting Lorena's chest, maybe a couple on his forehead, but nothing has landed clean on the chin from what I've seen so far. Nothing. That one was blocked again. So Okolie really throwing very hard with the right hand. Lerena maybe did feel one of those shots, even if it was partially blocked, because now he is giving Lawrence Okolie some space. But then he comes back with his own left hand over the top, which does not land. Lawrence Okolie steps away, and it falls short. 28 seconds left in the first round. Right hand again from Lawrence Okolie. Has Okolie successfully intimidated Lerena here with the power? If he has, we might get a relatively clean fight. Okolie holds on, throws a right hand and holds on. So not excessive clinching in the first round from Okolie, but we'll see how this fight unfolds. Okolie definitely won that first round for me. There's the bell. On a stream I'm watching in the live chat, there were already people complaining about holding. I think there was maybe 3 clinches in that round. That's not that many clinches, but because Okolie has a history of excessive clinching, people are like hypersensitive whenever he clinches. There was nothing excessive in that round at all in terms of clinching from Lawrence Okolie. So these people in, I'm not talking about the YouTube live chat here because I'm watching on the stream. The people in the stream, in the live chat, just talking absolute nonsense. It was 3, I want to say 3 clinches in the round. It wasn't excessive at all. 3 clinches in a round is okay. 3. Yeah, Okolie landed nice shots, straight right hand. And actually, Kevin Lerena clinched on that particular occasion when Okolie was getting shots. So if he would go round 2, bells just gone. Okay, then we get a clinch. 6 of one and half a dozen of the other to start of the second round. So we obviously have to keep an eye on this. Okolie extending his left hand out. Oh, there was a left hand there from Lerena. Now Okolie does clinch, but tries to punch in the clinch. Lerena just holding. So the commentators are saying that Okolie was maybe wobbled by a left hand from Lerena there. There's the right hand from Okolie, which is a very heavy shot. You can see the way he throws it and the sound of the shot. You can see the kinetic chain and the sound of the shot, even when it lands on Lorena's gloves. But Lerena hasn't been noticeably hurt by it yet. He might be wary because the shots feel heavy when they land on his gloves and in his chest, his forehead and stuff. But he hasn't been noticeably wobbled to me. Fight at a relatively measured pace at a minute. Again, Okolie going for that, but Okolie holds. Yeah, definitely more holding in this first round, maybe in the first half, than there was in the entirety of the, in the second round in the first half than there was in the entirety of the first half. So the frequency of the clinches is increasing, but it's nothing crazy. Or actually, right when I say it's nothing crazy, Lawrence Okolie starts to hold again. Oh dear. And I think this might be the anxiety for Okolie setting in a little bit because Lerena has not, as I keep saying, been noticeably hurt by his power yet. So is Okolie getting anxious? It's actually Lerena getting warned for the holding here. Or was it the head? Because, okay, there's a couple of clinches initiated by Lerena, but most of the clinches in this round will be initiated by Okolie. And Okolie holds again. Yeah, the ref is going to need to get onto him early about this. So Okolie wants to control the range by using that long right hand. Oh, left hand from Lerena was a decent shot, and again, Okolie fires back. Right hand to the body from Okolie. Lerena doesn't want to be on the ropes like that. Now Lerena actually holds on. I think Lerena might have been slightly buzzed by something there because backed off then held on. Okolie holds on towards the end of the round. That's the bell ending round 2. Okolie's breathing hard after that second round. I think that's anxiety. I think Okolie is anxious in there. When he can't hurt you, when he can't get some type of like noticeable reaction out of you, you know, wobbly legs, stuff like that. When he can't get, or a knockdown, obviously, when he can't get that out of you and you keep coming forward, is panic stations for Lawrence Okolie. That's what I think goes on with him. And that's when all the clinching starts. Anyway, you get the point. Shout out to everyone in the live chat, locked in. Shout out to Mr. Luca for the super chat. He says, big up Hatman. We in the crowd. Big up Mr. Luca in the crowd. Here we go. There's the bell for round 3. Lawrence Okolie versus Kevin Lerena. First 2 rounds on my card for Lawrence Okolie. Kevin Lerena has been kind of waiting a bit too much. I know Lawrence Okolie is very heavy-handed, but you can't allow him to get off to too much of a lead because he might just be able to jab, jab, grab once he's in the lead and you don't get a look in. So Lerena needs to seize the initiative here if he can. He's going for that big left hand. Maybe Lerena needs to pop a jab. You know, pop that right southpaw jab. Use some head movement. Right now he's looking to just counterpunch Lawrence Okolie. And, you know, we'll see if it pays off, but that's not primarily Lorena's game. Lerena can counterpunch, but he normally likes to lead off. So he's fighting in a way right now that he's not accustomed to fighting. Okolie extending that left hand. The referee really needs to warn him for doing that too much because that's illegal. You're not supposed to just hold your left hand out there like that, blinding your opponent. You need to pop the jab or else it's an illegal move. The ref being kind of lenient here on Okolie. It's a Frank Warren show. Yeah, no. The referee should be warning him for that. For holding his left arm out like that. That's illegal. Got Ajit Kabayel in the crowd there. Okay, Lawrence Okolie initiates a clinch here. Been a very, very quiet round, this third so far. Left hand from Lerena, I don't think connects. Okolie holds on again. Very, very quiet round. Okolie just throwing a few jabs and right hands, but the pace slowing. Okolie trying to bounce up and down on his feet. And funny enough, Okolie looks a lot older now, doesn't he, since he's put the weight on? The weight somehow makes him look older. Left hand from... Oh! That seemed like a decent shot from Lerena. I thought it had an effect for a second on Okolie. Maybe not. Okolie comes back with a right hand and a left hook to the body. Lerena misses a left. Okolie goes to the body himself. Octopus arms. Clinches Kevin Lerena. Shuts down his offense. Right hand again from Okolie, but again, Lerena not wobbled on his feet up to this point. His guard is relatively tight, Lerena. And Okolie actually wasting a lot of energy loading up on those right hands that are not connecting clean. There's the end of round 4. So I want to say Lerena does look somewhat intimidated by the power. He does. He's somewhat intimidated by the power. And if he remains intimidated by the power, Okolie can probably do this all night. So Lerena's going to need to start taking chances here if he really wants to win. Put the pressure on, make Okolie work at a pace faster than he's comfortable with, tire him out, and then maybe really try and rally in the fight late. Sorry, did I say round 4? End of round 4? That was the end of round 3, I guess. Yeah, this is round 4 now. Excuse me, guys. This is the start of round 4 now. 10 seconds in. I mistakenly, I think, said at the end of the last round that it was the end of round 4. No. That was the end of round 3. Yep, Kevin Lerena timid, standing on the outside. Okolie looking a little more relaxed now after that third because of the lack of pressure from Lerena. And to show the relaxation of Okolie, when Lerena came in there, rather than hold, Okolie just turned him. So that's, again, a measure of the relaxation that Okolie is starting to feel now. Lerena's got to take that relaxation away from him. Now Okolie does hold finally. And clubs away on the inside. Lerena's offense is just really, really slowed down here. Right hand again from Lawrence Okolie. And yeah, some swelling on the face of Lerena, which is not directly from Okolie's glove. It's from Okolie's glove hitting Lerena's glove and then Lerena's glove impacting on his own face. Got Simon Jordan in the crowd there. I think this is the first time I've seen Simon Jordan at a Saudi associated event. This one, what is it, a Ring Magazine event rather than Riyadh Season? Simon Jordan in the crowd. Anyway, minute left in the fourth. Lawrence Okolie in full control. Holds on the inside. Lerena finally opening up here with some decent shots. Decent body shots going in from Lerena. But smothered by the octopus. Okay, the referee warning them about the holding. That's a familiar sight in a Lawrence Okolie fight. Jab from Okolie. Again, Okolie trying to slot that right hand down the middle. Holds when Lerena gets close. Okolie bouncing on his feet there, maintaining that range, straight shots, moves around the ring. There's the end of round number 4. I jumped the gunner the end of the last round thinking that was the end of 4. Nope, end of 4 was right there. We're interviewing Conor Benn here. Here we go, round 5. Bell just gone. Okolie and Lerena. Will there be any type of shift in momentum in this fight? It's been pretty much all Lawrence Okolie so far. Controlling things at long range, tying Lerena up on the inside, using his jab, and of course that big, long, straight, powerful right hand, which is discouraging Kevin Lerena from coming in. Combination from Okolie, then he ties up. Body shot there from Okolie with the right hand. Okolie getting on his bike a little bit here. Light on his feet for a 260-pound man. But, yeah, the straight right down the middle for Okolie. That's his punch. He throws that very naturally. He's kind of feinting as if he's going to throw an uppercut every now and then he kind of uppercuts to the body there. But he hasn't, and there's a right hook to the body there from Lawrence Okolie, then he ties up. He hasn't landed that right hand down the middle really flush. He's attempted a few ones round the side to try and mix it up. There's a right hand down the middle again from Okolie. Is the steam from Okolie's right hand starting to leave it a little bit here? Because at some point that will happen. Left hand there from Lerena. It's the first shot with a backhand he's landed in a while. Wasn't any tremendous power on it, but it did get through. Okolie rough on the inside with the forearm, ties up. 30 seconds left in round number 5. Right hand and Okolie holds on again. It's looking like a Klitschko fight. Vladimir Klitschko, that is. There's the clapper for the end of the round. That's a nice right hook there from Lerena. Lerena starts to come to life in like the final 10 seconds of rounds. I mean, but that's not going to get the job done when he's done so little for the rest of the round. Anyway, that was the end of the 5th. Round number 6 underway now. This is a 10-rounder. Mercifully, because it isn't very entertaining. Okolie again. Holding on the inside, throwing a few shots, scrappy. As Okolie performances go, this hasn't been the most excessively clinchy performance. There's been plenty of clinching, don't get it twisted, but it hasn't been absurd. I mean, the most absurd Lawrence Okolie performance I've ever seen was the Matty Askin fight. He was holding on to Matyaskin for dear life. He should have been disqualified against Matyaskin. That was ridiculous. Seriously. In fact, no, scratch that. Worse than the Matyaskin fight was the Chris Billum-Smith fight. That was a shocker. He should have been disqualified against Chris Billum-Smith too. I think he was deducted several points. So this fight is not as ridiculous in terms of excessive clinching as either of those fights. He's teetering on the brink of excessive clinching here. You know, it's not quite. It's teetering on the verge of that. Sweeping left hand there from Lerena was well wide of the mark. Lerena making it too comfortable for Okolie here with the lack of offense. But Okolie's lacking some creativity with the right hand. He's got a guy here who really isn't moving his head, who's blocking the shots, yes, but you need to start showing some subtleties to open that guard up, you know? Because he's just throwing the same straight right hand down the middle again and again and again. There's a lack of creativity there. Maybe stagger the right hand. Act like you're going to throw it and then loop it round the side when you don't. And he threw a right hand to the body there. That was good to maybe bring the... Oh, big left hand from Lerena. I swear Okolie's legs wobbled there. Right hand back from Okolie, but I swear Okolie's legs looked like they wobbled to me when that left hand landed. Or perhaps it's just his gangliness that, you know, similar. There was the end of the round, end of round 6. Maybe it's just his gangliness that makes him look more affected by punches than he really is. I'm not sure. All right, there's Ade ringside talking to Jake Paul. Let's see what Jake Paul's got to say. Okay, Jake Paul is saying that the Anthony Joshua fight is going to happen. Okay. Round 7, bell's gone. Oh. Lerena slips on the canvas there. Right hand from Okolie. Okolie opening up here. Not sure if he's seen something, but opening it up. A lot of punches. Lerena very, very tentative. He's really feeling the weight of those shots. Even though they landed on his gloves and his chest and stuff, he's really feeling the weight of them. Very, very tentative from Lerena. Another right hand from Okolie. Left hand from Lerena to Okolie's chest. Okolie, relax now. If he was anxious earlier on in the fight, that anxiety is no longer there. Because Lerena is just so cautious. Again, Okolie measuring with the left hand. Referee has never warned him about that, and he really should. 1-2 from Okolie. Straight shots. Taking a little trot around the ring. Is Okolie trying to walk him onto something by moving around like this, or is he just trying to, save some of his own energy? rather than just standing in front of Lerena and teeing off and not having the desired effect. Okolie ties Lerena up here. Inside the final minute of the 7th. Yeah, this is the kind of performance which I'm pretty sure Richard Dwyer will be absolutely ecstatic about. Shout out to Richard Dwyer. He loves performances like this. And it's not like the most horrific performance I've ever seen from Okolie. But it's fairly dreary stuff. Left hand there from Lerena at the end of the round. Again, he's trying to be active in the final 10 seconds. Again, but that's the end of the 7th. Okay, they're interviewing Gordon Ramsay. Gordon Ramsay's been a long-time fight fan. He used to attend boxing matches even in the 1990s. I remember seeing him ringside for one of Prince Nassim's fights, at least one of them, which was... The one I remember was when Prince Nassim fought and beat Tom Johnson in a unification, the American Tom Johnson, knocked him out with a beautiful uppercut. Gordon Ramsay, I'm pretty sure, was ringside for that fight. And he may have been ringside for other Prince Nassim fights. Doesn't look like it's raining there in London. It's always a good thing when people have promoters put on stadium shows and it's not raining. Because last time Usyk fought Dubois, it was tipping it down over in Poland. Anyway, we're 10 seconds into, what is this, the 8th? Yes, the 8th round. Lerena needs a knockout to win this. Needs to find a big left hand, a big right hand, something, a body shot. Because if you're generous, you might give Lerena 1 or 2 rounds so far. Oh, decent couple of shots from Lerena there, finally. You might have heard me. Didn't seem to have much of an effect on Okolie, but that's the right idea. Okolie able to control everything with those right hands and his jab, which is really more of a rangefinder and a range keeper, a distance keeper. The only hard shots, for the most part, Okolie has thrown have been with the right. So the commentators haven't given Lerena a single round, and I can't argue with it. As I said, if you're being very generous, you might give Lerena 1 or 2 rounds. If you've given him none, you couldn't argue with that. Okolie just looking like he's coasting now. Trying to get these last 3 rounds out of the way and just coast his way to victory. He's not really loading up on that right hand in this round the way he was in previous rounds. Maybe he's kind of resigned himself to going the distance, thinking he will not get the stoppage here, so why keep going for it? There's the odd hard right hand now and then, but for the most part it's just movement, range control, and doing just enough to take the round. Coming up to 30 seconds left in round 8. 2 more rounds after this. It's like a sparring session now. As I understand it, these guys have sparred quite a bit in the past. And you have to imagine this is what their sparring sessions look like. Lerena with some head movement there right at the end of the round, tries the left hand, but there you go. That's the end of round 8. We're seeing scenes backstage of Oleksandr Usyk getting gloved up by Russ Anbar, the owner of Rival, the boxing glove and boxing equipment company. I'm seeing loads and loads and loads of empty seats in Wembley even now. Is this the penultimate fight, or is there something between this fight and the main event? I wouldn't imagine so. I think this is the penultimate fight. And there are loads of empty seats from what I can see in the upper tiers. Anyway, here we go, round 9. Can Lerena pull a giant punch out of the bag to turn this one on its head? Okolie again measuring with the left hand, throwing the right hand behind it. Okolie really not popping the jab at all. But that might be because he's fighting a southpaw. And the southpaw right hand gets in the way. It clashes with the orthodox jabbing hand. So that might be why he's not really popping that jab. And he's just used... Oh! That seemed like a decent shot from Lerena there. Jab to the body from Okolie. Right hand to the body from Okolie. And again, as I said earlier on, if you notice, the more cautious Lerena becomes, the less clinching there is in the fight. Oh, right! Left hand, I swear! That should look like it affected Lawrence Okolie. Unless their feet clashed, maybe. Because the camera didn't show their feet in that moment. But Okolie appeared to stumble after that shot landed. Again, maybe Lerena stepped on his foot. I don't know. Because Lerena didn't really jump on him. But yeah, as I was saying, the key to a relatively clinch-free Okolie fight is an opponent who gives him space. When the opponent doesn't give him space, that's when you get the clinch fest. Because he doesn't like it on the inside of 20. Anyway, that's the end of the 9th. One more round to go. Lerena needs to let it all hang out now if he really wants to win this fight. And maybe he is just happy to go the distance and doesn't want to risk getting knocked out going for the win himself. Maybe he doesn't have that level of ambition. There's the bell for the 10th. Final round of this heavyweight bout between Lawrence Okolie and Kevin Lerena. It's pretty much been a shutout by Lawrence Okolie through 9 rounds. He's had it all his own way. Lerena has been intimidated by the power. He's been frozen on the outside and has allowed Okolie to pretty much do whatever he wants. Lerena's guard has been pretty good. He hasn't taken too many of them right hands flush. And he's shown a decent set of whiskers, but that's about it. He hasn't offered much in this fight. Lawrence Okolie has let his power shots go up plenty, but they haven't had the desired effect, which has led Okolie to settle into what we see now, where he's just kind of coasting his way to a victory. Lerena actually motioned to Lawrence Okolie there to stand in the middle of the ring and fight, which is kind of funny because when Okolie was doing that earlier on in the fight, Lerena wasn't really throwing with him. Seeing Turkey leave the ringside area there. Is he that turned off by Okolie's performance? Again, just pecking and poking now, Lawrence Okolie. He's really not trying to end the fight anymore. Just seeing the round out. Trying to keep himself safe. Left hand there from Lerena. 30 seconds left in round number 10. Referee Victor Loughran breaks him up. It would take something miraculous, obviously, in the final 20 seconds here from Lerena to save this for him. If he has it, he needs to throw it now. No, he's not doing it. There was a left hand there finally, but far too little, far too late. Lawrence Okolie cruises to a comfortable 10-round points decision win. The scorecards are inevitably going to be wide in his favor, and justifiably so. Encircled says we need Parker versus Okolie. That way we witness the dullest fight in human history. Well, here's the thing about Okolie, right? He just went through that fight with Lerena. Jabbing, throwing right hands, moving, and then coasting to a victory. That's because Lerena wasn't willing to take chances. He was intimidated by the power. Higher level heavyweights will be willing to take chances against Lawrence Okolie. So I don't expect, let's say, Okolie against somebody like Martin Bakole, Okolie against Kabayel, Okolie against Zhang, Okolie against Hrgovic, or even Okolie against Usyk or Dubois. I don't expect him against any of those fighters to be as soporific as this fight was. because those guys are going to be trying to win. Those guys are not going to be so easily intimidated by his power. And those guys are strong enough, at least some of them, in my estimation, are strong enough to where if Okolie does start to hold, they'll still be able to shrug him off and get punches on target. In 100 to 90, Lawrence Okolie. Comfortable win for him there. I think one judge had Lerena winning one round and the other two had Okolie winning every single round. Can't argue with it. Let's have a listen to what Okolie has to say in the post-fight interview, which I'm sure will be far more entertaining than the fight itself. Did Okolie have an issue with his left arm there? I saw him with one of his team members kind of gesturing to his left arm. So seeing images, video footage of Daniel Dubois warming up with Don Charles. Harrow protagonist says, Dubois undisputed nearly here. You know, if Dubois does win, I've got no issue with it in and of itself. My only issue is Don Charles getting a victory. That guy's just insufferable. Him and his son, they're insufferable. But I got nothing against Dubois. For the sake of anyone who ain't heard it, my prediction is Oleksandr Usyk on points. I can't believe they had Darren Barker doing the face-off between Usyk and Dubois. Like the dullest boxing presenter / commentator in the world was picked to do the face-off. Crazy. Some people are picking Usyk by disqualification. They think Dubois is going to be very dirty in this fight. Many people think that Dubois is dirty in most, if not all, of his fights. So we've got Sully picking Dubois to stop Usyk in the 5th. We'll find out very shortly. Let me change the graphic on screen here. So I'm picking Usyk on points. In terms of percentages, as I've said before, I give Daniel Dubois a 40% chance in this fight, which apparently is higher than most. Because whenever I reveal the fact I'm giving Dubois a 40% chance, There's normally a bunch of people in the live chat saying that's way too high. Well, we'll find out if it's way too high. A 40% chance would mean the fight's going to be competitive and difficult for Usyk, right? If it's an easy victory for Usyk, a comfortable win, then obviously my 40% is not accurate. Exactamundo says Dubois getting DQ'd in Wembley, never. That's the thing. It's a Frank Warren show, innit? And it's at Wembley. It would take a very brave referee to disqualify Daniel Dubois under these circumstances in this location. All right, we got Kate Scott, formerly Kate Abdo, talking to Lennox Lewis and Carl Frampton. I've never liked Lennox Lewis as an analyst. I've always found him awkward and weird as an analyst. He was a great boxer, obviously, but I never liked him as a commentator. Definitely don't like him as an analyst. And wee little Carl Frampton. Let's listen to what he's got to say here. Daniel Dubois staring down the camera. He's definitely got a sweat on there, Daniel Dubois, so we can expect him to come out fast. Very much warmed up. He's got his sweat on. He'll come out swinging. Jazz says, I don't think Lennox Lewis watches much boxing outside the analyst work he's asked to do, often gives generic answers. I would go further than that and say he normally gives generic answers. Yeah, normally. Trolls are bad said, I found Lennox Lewis fine when he commentated on HBO. I didn't. I never liked him on HBO. I never liked him on HBO. That's right, AJ. Just remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. You What Mate says, decent performance by Sleepy Okolie, to be fair. Yeah, by his standards, it was a decent performance. It wasn't exciting, but there wasn't the obscene level of clinching that we've seen in some of his previous fights, like when he fought Chris Billam-Smith and Matty Askin. Somebody saying Dubois by first round KO. Hyro says Usyk looking aged. Whenever we get close to a fight, that's when people get on their nerves and they start thinking something really dramatic's going to happen. Hey, something dramatic might happen, but it's common for people to get more on edge the closer you get towards the start of a fight. All right, tailor the tape. Usyk, 38. Dubois, 11 years younger at 27. Usyk, a career heaviest, 227 pounds. That's only a pound heavier than he was for his last fight, but for his last fight, he weighed in with a lot of clothes. For this fight, he didn't appear to have as many clothes on. So I think he's maybe more than a pound heavier than he was for his last fight. I reckon for his last fight, he might have really been around 223, 224. For this fight, maybe a legit 226, 227, you know? And that is not a massive amount of weight for a heavyweight, but for a guy who's consistently been within a pound or two of the same weight for his last few, for him to be this much heavier than he was, let's say, for the Anthony Joshua fight, what was he, 222, 221? And here he is, like, basically half a stone heavier than that several years later. So Usyk is not in his prime anymore, as far as I'm concerned. He hasn't been in his prime for quite a while, but still good enough to dust off the likes of Luke Partridge, a.k.a. Tyson Fury, Anthony Joshua, and Daniel Dubois the first time. Shout out to Hyro Protagonist for the super chat. Shout out to Danny for the super chat. He says, Usyk will stop Dubois and dominate. That's what Danny's going for. Hyro Protagonist says, buzzing to witness history with the channel. Big up Hyro Protagonist. Much appreciated, sir. D-Man says, Dubois better not quit from a jab. Hopefully he is carrying confidence now. Yeah, he'll be carrying more confidence, I think, in the early rounds than he was in the first fight. Usyk's task here is to try and take that confidence away from Daniel Dubois, because as long as Dubois is confident, he's going to be swinging big shots. And when a guy the size of him is swinging big shots at you, you're always in danger. So the task for Usyk is to try and get Dubois under control. Shout out to Belt Loops Matter. He says, got a feeling Triple D wins this by KO. A lot of people are saying that. We'll find out very shortly. And if Triple D does win by KO or otherwise, then we'll see this as a passing of the torch fight between the old generation and the new. And I will reiterate what I said after Oleksandr Usyk defeated Luke Partridge for a second time, which is that he should have retired after that fight. Even if Usyk wins tonight, I still maintain he should have retired after the Partridge rematch. Shout out to D-Man for the super chat. He says, I can't see Usyk being less hittable than last time. He is older and slower. I would tend to agree with that. However, Usyk didn't get hit much last time. And he's a fighter who relies primarily on technique rather than speed and reflexes. Obviously, speed and reflexes play a part, without a shadow of a doubt. But they don't play as much of a part for a guy like Usyk as they would for, let's say, a Muhammad Ali or a Roy Jones. Fighters who are not as technically proficient as Usyk, not as technically correct, who make more fundamental errors. because Usyk is so technically correct, that allows him to continue at the upper levels of boxing for a little bit longer, because he's not relying as heavily on athleticism, because his technique is so polished. But there's clearly a lot of people in the chat, and I have to imagine a lot of people watching, who are nervous for Usyk right now, thinking that it's all going to come to an end here. I guess they can feel something in the air, like Phil Collins. Shout out to Belt Loops Matter. He says, if Triple D looks the same uppercut as Tyson Fury did in Usyk Fury 1, it's over. What do you think? I guess you meant to say lands the same uppercut, it's over. I don't know. Usyk's never been down from a headshot, so I don't want to go that far. We'll see if it happens, you know? Usyk's shown, obviously, a very good defense, but when he has been clipped clean, a good chin. So, will it really be one and done with a headshot? I would imagine if it's a one and done, if Dubois was able to win, it'd more likely be a body shot. So yeah, a lot of nervous individuals in the live chat here, concerned for Oleksandr Usyk. And of course, there's a few people picking Daniel Dubois who are very much Team Dubois. They want Dubois to get the job done. Again, as I said earlier on, I've got no issue with Dubois winning, you know? Shout out to David Gold. He's got Dubois by KO. I got no issue with Dubois winning. No problem with him whatsoever. The only downside for me of Dubois winning is, well, for one, it tarnishes Usyk's legacy. He could have retired after the Partridge rematch and gone down in history as a unique champion. This is an unnecessary risk as far as I'm concerned, but it is what it is. That's his choice. The only thing that would really bother me with a Dubois win is more so Don Charles. Because he's such a donut. He and his son, I'm not going to call him George Fox, I'm going to call him Abdi Fox. His son, Abdi Fox. Those two guys are insufferable. Insufferable. And if they're insufferable now, imagine if Dubois wins, what Don Charles and Abdi Fox are going to be like. Shout out to the Somali crew. You know why I'm calling him Abdi. Shout out to D-Man for the super chat. He says, the issue is fickle fans, not a loss. I hear you. I hear you. Kieran Malcolm says, why Abdi Fox? Because the guy looks blatantly Somali. That's why Abdi. And Abdi is like the most common Somali male name that I know of. It seems like damn near 90% of Somali guys are called Abdi. Someone says Wallahi in the chat. Wallahi. All right, someone's saying Dubois' demeanor is different to the AJ fight. He doesn't look as laser, you know, I don't know. Yeah, he does look a bit different to the AJ fight, yeah. I don't know whether it's a bad thing or a good thing, but he does look a little different. I will say that. It does look a little different to the AJ fight. One thing I'll say is Dubois knew there was weakness in AJ, right? Now, maybe you could say he knows there's weakness in Usyk because he believes in the low blow in the first fight being a legitimate shot. Maybe. But with AJ, he's seen AJ knocked down and knocked out a bunch of times going into their fight. And he'd also done it himself, apparently in sparring, when he was just a teenager. And I don't recall during the face-offs with AJ, Daniel Dubois looking away. Now, Dubois looks fired up to me on the walk to the ring there. He looks very fired up. Very fired up. Look at his face. Now, he looks very, very fired up. He's going to come out swinging fast. But in the face-offs with Usyk, Dubois was the one to look away on all the face-offs I saw. Maybe there's nothing to be read into that for Dubois. Maybe he's not bothered about trying to win a face-off. He's experienced enough now. Or is it a sign that Usyk still has some type of mental hold over him? Because Dubois hasn't seen enough weakness in him. Do you know what I mean? I don't know. Usually, face-offs don't mean much between experienced fighters. Usually. Although, with Usyk, what I will say is that Usyk likes to win face-offs. He's a bit like Mike Tyson in that regard. He makes a thing of always trying to win face-offs. I've never seen Usyk lose one. I'm not saying he hasn't lost one, but I've never seen him lose a face-off. He always makes a point of never looking away first. He's that level of competitor. Everything to Usyk is a competition. Do you know what I mean? Everything is a competition to this guy. He's ridiculously competitive. And that's why he's still boxing at the age of 38. Because he is that type of competitor. Boxing beyond the point where there's anything to be gained out of it in terms of legacy. In my opinion, anyway. I think after the second victory over Partridge, Usyk has reached the point of diminishing returns. Anyway, Usyk's ring walk starting here. Shout out to Danny for the super chat. He says, Dubois will start strong, but Usyk will manage him. Okay, this is an interesting ring walk. So you got a bunch of people in robes, like boxers, walking out in front of Usyk. And I guess Usyk is amongst them somewhere. Or is he? Or is he going to be coming in behind? Yeah, Usyk's coming in behind him. Here we are. With his entourage. There's Oleksandr Usyk. In his grey robe. Still with Egis Klimas, his manager. Although the promoter is no longer. Still with Klimas, who's been with him for many years. The whole team crossing themselves, as is their routine. I got no idea what the music is saying, but it's very emotive, innit? Emotionally rousing music. Now, Usyk looking his usual self, cool. I say usual self. He's not looking as keyed up as he was for the Fury fights. Maybe that's a bad thing. But how could he be as keyed up fighting Dubois, a guy he's already beat, a guy who had lost previously to other people? How could he be as keyed up, or another person in Joe Joyce and himself before? How could he be as keyed up for this as he was for Fury or even AJ the first time? He's a human being at the end of the day. As disciplined as he is, you're not going to be able to get up for every fight emotionally, mentally, spiritually, to the same extent, especially at this stage of your career. But anyway, it looks cool. As he marches towards the ring, staring, maybe at himself on the screen or staring at Dubois in the ring, but Dubois is going to come out fast. Dubois is definitely coming out fast. So Usyk over the top rope, even though he's not as tall as a Luke Partridge, for example. We got Rick Reno in the ring there, looking like a sleazy character from a 1980s action flick. So, according to FanZone here, 67% picking Usyk, 33% picking Daniel Dubois. Is it lucky number 33 for Daniel Dubois? Is he a worshipful brother? He and his dad? You reckon either of them are Masons? You reckon Dubois' dad's a Mason? Shout out to D-Man for the super chat. He says, hard to picture Dubois as a multi-millionaire. Still living at home with his dad, innit? Connor Williams says, Juju. Somebody asking, did I see that weird interview with Dubois' dad? Every interview I've seen with Dubois' dad is weird. So I'm not quite sure which one you're referring to, because they all seem weird to me. He's a weird character. Dubois, like a caged lion, pacing around in the ring there. I'm sure Usyk knows what's coming. But brace himself for impact. Because as far as Dubois is concerned, this is like the AJ fight part 2. A continuity of that type of energy within him. He's going to be looking to do major damage as quickly as possible. Dubois pacing back and forth, very, very fired up. Dubois reminiscent in terms of his demeanor in the ring right now of a young Mike Tyson. I'm not saying he's as good as Mike Tyson, calm down. I'm just saying the way Mike Tyson used to pace up and down in the ring before a fight. Yeah. Shades of that here for Daniel Dubois. Dubois very, very fired up. Very, very fired up. Triple D Daniel Dubois. Fired up to high hell here. Let's see what he can do with that energy. And that's what he needs to be, as far as I'm concerned. Dubois, if he's going to win the fight, needs to be fired up and come out and don't give Usyk any respect. Stick it on him, hit him wherever he can hit him. even if he's not landed on the head. Hit him in the body, the arms, anywhere, and try to break down the old man, you know? Don't get into a boxing match with him. I'm trying to listen to this crowd reaction. I think there are some boos in there for Usyk. Obviously, fighting away from home is a very normal thing for him. He's beaten so many guys in their backyards. So boos won't bother him, of course. There we go. Moments away from the opening bell. Both guys poised. Dubois fired up. Fighters facing off during the referee's instructions. Usyk ice cold, Dubois fired up. A song of ice and fire. But who will be the king in this Game of Thrones? I'm trying to do a Teddy Atlas here. Seconds out. Round one, here we go. Round one, Usyk Dubois II. Dubois taking center ring right away. Usyk in the white, Dubois in the black. Jabs from Daniel Dubois in the front foot, pushing Usyk back. I think Usyk senses Dubois' energy here, and he's not trying to hold center ring, giving up ground. It's the first time I've seen Usyk give up ground like this early in a fight for quite some time. Dubois very, very much on the front foot. Usyk trying to use those feints to back Dubois off a little bit. Good jab from Oleksandr Usyk with the right there. 1-2 from Dubois was fast. Landed on Oleksandr Usyk's chest. Another right hand from Dubois. He's coming out very aggressive. Usyk trying to use that movement, feinting with that right lead. But Dubois, very, very tense. Nice jab again from Usyk. Left hand to the body from Usyk. Usyk feinting, bouncing, right hand from Dubois. Wasn't too far off the mark. I think it might have landed on Usyk's chest. Usyk felt the weight of that right hand to the body from Dubois. You can already see Dubois more confident, and he's more flat-footed actually here. Nice right jab though from Oleksandr Usyk. Dubois more flat-footed in this first round than he was in the first round of their first fight, which to me shows he's looking to really set his feet and punch with Usyk when he gets an opportunity. He's not trying to box with him as much here. It's almost Joe Louis style here from Daniel Dubois, but Usyk is the one who's landed the clean shot so far. Daniel Dubois throwing big. Usyk feinting. Dubois loading up on big shots, swinging, missing there with a left hook. Usyk moving his head. Throwing a left hand out there, speculative. Just moving around Oleksandr Usyk. Right hand from Dubois. He's throwing heavy, heavy shots. Usyk definitely needs to watch himself with this young, hungry lion. Dubois more confident here than he was in the first fight. No doubt about it. He has the look of a man who feels as though landing the big knockout shot is inevitable. That's the way that's Dubois' demeanor here. Right hand from Daniel Dubois through the middle. More shots there from Daniel Dubois to the chest. That's good from Dubois. Right hand from Dubois. Usyk being asked a few questions there. Left hand back from Oleksandr Usyk. Jab to the body from Usyk. Very, very interesting opening round. A flurry at the end of the round from Oleksandr Usyk. Trying to get Dubois back. But he's going to have to fight for this victory. That's the end of round one. A very, very interesting round. I give it to Usyk. But Dubois was competitive in there, no doubt. What do you guys think in the live chat? People are saying good round from Dubois. Richard Draper saying Usyk round. I gave Usyk the round. Yes, Dubois was confident, but Usyk definitely landed more clean shots. So I'm giving Usyk the round, but Dubois' confidence was there and he looked dangerous. He looked imposing, you know? He looked imposing. And this is going to be the key for Usyk early in this fight, is to draw Dubois' sting. To get all of that aggressive energy out of Dubois and then start punishing him for his mistakes and the chances he's taken in trying to land his own shots. But Dubois got to just keep doing what he's doing. Here we go, round two anyway. Jab to the body from Usyk. With the left hand from Usyk there was a decent shot. Dubois undeterred, coming forward, letting big shots go. Usyk having to use those 38-year-old legs. Dubois quickly jumps in with a 1-2. Very aggressive is Daniel Dubois. Jabbing. Usyk with a right jab back. Usyk moving that head, getting his jab off, throwing the left hand to Dubois' body. He's definitely got a live wire in him, a live wire in with him tonight, Oleksandr Usyk. Throwing the jabs, Dubois looking to counter with his right hand. A lot more activity from Daniel Dubois in the first two rounds. I mean, the first 4 minutes, really, of this rematch than we saw in the first fight. Far more activity from Dubois, throwing a lot more shots, taking a lot more chances. Usyk having to be really, really mindful here on defense as Dubois comes at him. Again, Usyk feinting, throwing, feinting, throwing. Usyk using those feints. Right hand from Dubois to the body was a good shot. And, you know, Richard Dwyer pointed something out. Oh, big, huge shot from Dubois. Doesn't quite get there. Usyk counters him. Left hand to the body from Usyk was a nice shot. Another left hand to the body from Usyk. But Richard Dwyer pointed something out about the first fight. And that is that Daniel Dubois threw or landed very few body shots in the first fight. Even though there was that controversy with the low blow, Dubois barely went to the body in the first fight. I think he's probably gone to the body more times in the first 2 rounds of this fight than he did in the entirety of the last fight in terms of, you know, body shots gone for and landed. Big right hand again from Dubois looking to catch Usyk. It was blocked, but the right idea was there for Daniel Dubois. So it's a much more confident Triple D this time, but Usyk getting shots off there, peppering Dubois. Dubois looking for them body shots. Left hand there from Usyk. Dubois tries to come back with a counter. Left hand to the body from Usyk. Just pecking and poking. Big left hand from Usyk. I think that wobbled Dubois. Dubois wobbled. Dubois felt the shot. Dubois backing up. But Usyk got to be careful on the front foot. Yeah, that's a Oleksandr Usyk round again. Dubois was wobbled by the left hand at the back end of the round there. So he got over aggressive, walked onto one, and that definitely had an effect. People say Oleksandr Usyk can't punch. Listen, he's a 227-pound man. If you walk onto one of his shots, you're going to feel it. And Daniel Dubois felt that shot there at the end of the round. So for me, that's 2-0 Usyk. Yep. A lot of people are scoring rounds for Dubois' aggression. He is aggressive and he does look menacing, but I'm focusing on the punches that are actually landing. I'm not focusing on who looks menacing and who's throwing what. I'm focusing on what punches are landing. And for me, Usyk won those 2 rounds. There's the left hand. Bang! That was a great shot from Usyk right on the butt of the jaw. of Daniel Dubois. So here we go, round number 3. Dubois is going to have to walk through shots like that, right? Here we go. Dubois coming out very aggressive, start of round 3. He's going to have to maintain that energy. He can't be deterred by Oleksandr Usyk landing some shots on him, you know? He's got to keep it going. Oh! Usyk off balance there after Dubois came with a right hand. Very, very intense Daniel Dubois in this fight. Oh, good right hand from Dubois. That landed clean. Usyk took it well, but that shot did land clean. Dubois coming in. Oh, big shots from Daniel Dubois. That hit Usyk on the shoulder, on the body. These are heavy, heavy shots from Daniel Dubois. Trying to break down the older man's body. Right hook from Oleksandr Usyk as Daniel Dubois tried to land a power shot. Usyk trying to feint, but he knows this is a different Dubois than the first fight. You can see it in Usyk's demeanor. The right hand from Daniel Dubois, I think, was partially blocked by Oleksandr Usyk. This is a better round for Dubois so far. Daniel Dubois, very intense look on his face. Oh, big left hand again from Usyk. Big left hand lands clean on Dubois. Another left hand from Usyk. Dubois backing up. Dubois trying to come back with shots though, not looking discouraged as of yet, even though he's getting caught clean. Usyk blocks Dubois' shot, then moves off. Right hand was blocked on the glove from Dubois on Usyk. 44 seconds left in this third. Dubois still looking very, very dangerous. Usyk moving his head, getting off the ropes. The first fight, Usyk was fighting it primarily on the front foot. In this fight, he's primarily on the back foot so far. Such is the aggression of Daniel Dubois and the risk-taking of Daniel Dubois. He wants it. Coming to the end of the third. And of course, this is where my stream freezes up. I have to look for a different stream between rounds. Round 4. Oleksandr Usyk, Daniel Dubois II. Dubois again, very aggressive at the start of the round. Very aggressive. Starting every round with serious intent, looking to do damage. Usyk got to be on the job every second of this fight, because Daniel Dubois is not relenting as of yet. So Carl Frampton had Usyk winning the first 2, Dubois with the third. The third was definitely better for Dubois than the first 2 was. Usyk landing a right hook up front there and then looking to swing the southpaw left over. Right jab there from Oleksandr Usyk. Nice right hook there from Usyk. Not much power on the shot, but a scoring blow nonetheless. Dubois coming forward, lots of aggression. Dubois trying to get the jab going now. Big, big, strong jabs from Daniel Dubois. Manhandling Usyk there as Usyk tried to back away from the pocket. Left hand from Usyk, trying to get the jab off. Left hand there from Usyk, another left hand from Usyk. He's getting the shots off. But Usyk, I mean, to me, noticeably slower here than in any fight I've seen of him previously. Noticeably slower. Slower feet, slower hands, slower head movement. This is not as good a version of Usyk as we saw in the first fight. Obviously, Dubois is being more aggressive, and that is forcing Usyk more on the back foot. But just the bounce in Usyk's legs is not what it was in the first fight. And you expect that at this age and at this stage, because he's done everything in boxing. Daniel Dubois trying to back Usyk into the corner. Swings a big right hand, is made to miss. Usyk back to the center of the ring. Left hand to the body. Right hook upstairs. The pace slowing though in this fourth round. And that's not good, you wouldn't have thought for Dubois. But that was a right hand to the belt line there for Daniel Dubois, which Usyk complained about. Keep it up. Keep the punches up. Usyk feinting. Dubois trying to bounce a little bit here. Oh, nice left hand from Usyk there. With 10 seconds left. No, Usyk opening up a little bit here, the back end of the round. Maybe trying to seal the round for himself. Dubois letting him get away with stealing the round there. Let him get away with it there. Has Dubois shot his load? Pause. What do you guys think in the chat? Has Dubois shot his load, or is he just taking a little breather in that round? Because it's 3-0 or 4-0 or 3-1 to Usyk on my card. Now, that shot wasn't as low as the last one. That shot was more like a borderline shot. So Barry Jones talking rubbish. That shot was borderline legal. It was definitely not as low. The majority of the glove did not land below the hip line. That was literally, the whole glove was on the belt. So that's a borderline shot. The shot in the first fight was just blatantly low. Jason Statham in attendance. Here we go. Round number 5. Usyk out on the front foot. Usyk using that right jab. Dubois looking to get his jab off. Usyk moving around, feinting, trying to get that bounce back in his leg. Right hand from Dubois wasn't too far off. Usyk just managed to block it. So Dubois still dangerous. I asked the question at the end of the last round, is Dubois shot his load? Well, physically, we're not sure yet, but mentally, he's still very much there. Doesn't look discouraged yet to me. Usyk feinting, trying to get Dubois to think. Getting the right jab off. Spinning out the pocket, as he likes to do, away from the power hand, or the main power hand of Daniel Dubois, although he does have a very good left hook as well. Chance of Usyk from the crowd now. Lands a 1-2 on Daniel Dubois. That was a nice couple of shots. Dubois backs off. Left hand from Usyk. Right hand from Usyk. Daniel Dubois backing off. He was bothered by those shots. Usyk cannot get too greedy though, because Daniel Dubois is still swinging heavy shots back. He's still trying to let... Oh, big right hand from Daniel Dubois. Usyk landing shots. Oh, down goes Dubois. Down goes Daniel Dubois in round 5. Couple of shots and Dubois goes down. Maybe he is mentally unraveling. Down again. Daniel Dubois. Usyk needs to be careful because Dubois going to... Big right hook from Usyk. Left hand from Usyk. Oh, Daniel Dubois out. Daniel Dubois down badly. Down goes Dubois. Heavy knockdown this time. Dubois looking at his corner. Face looks dejected. Is Usyk about to blast him out in 5? It's over. Daniel Dubois fails to beat the count. Oleksandr Usyk does it earlier than last time. Shout out to everyone who picked Usyk by knockout. Shout out to those who picked Usyk to do a demolition job, because at the end of the day, even though Dubois did try harder in the early going, he took the gamble, which I think he needed to take. It ultimately didn't pay off. Oleksandr Usyk was the better fighter. He got there with the counters, and he punched the fight out of Daniel Dubois. Fantastic performance from a 38-year-old champion. He drops to his knees. Great stuff from Oleksandr Usyk. Right when Dubois was really trying to put it on him, Usyk caught him. And it's a weird thing. It's like, we know Usyk's got a decent amount of power, but surely the likes of Anthony Joshua, Filip Hrgović, even Jarrell Miller hit at least as hard as Usyk, if not harder. But none of those guys, despite landing flush on Dubois plenty of times, other than AJ, never managed to hurt Dubois as easily as Usyk did. Isn't that interesting? It's almost like it's a mental thing with Dubois as much as a physical thing. It's like he was broken down mentally in those first 4 rounds because he gave it everything, but he didn't have the desired effect. And then when he started getting hit clean, it's as if like his spirit just was like, nah, allow it. So here's a left hand from Usyk, right hand from Usyk. Oh, my stream's paused there. Right when I was trying to look at the slow-mo replay. It's got them frozen on me, god damn it. So I could describe the slow-mo for you, but there's the shots going in from Oleksandr. Ugh. Now let's see the finish, because that was the first knockdown when Dubois went down. And the finish, Dubois swinging away, but the left hand right on the chin. Bang on the chin, down goes Daniel Dubois. I picked Usyk to win this fight on points. I thought it would be a bit more rough for him, and it was more rough as long as it lasted, but he got the job done. You know, he got Dubois out of there earlier than last time, despite it being a bit of a more testing fight in the early going. It was more of a shootout here, you know, and Usyk won the shootout. That was a great shot to finish the fight from Usyk. And poor Daniel Dubois goes down. The guy who blasted out Anthony Joshua, who blasted out Filip Hrgović eventually, who stopped Jarrell Miller in the 10th round. Taken out by the 38-year-old Oleksandr Usyk in 5. And no more silly nonsense from Don Charles or Abdi Fox, a.k.a. George Fox. I call him Abdi Fox. And as the commentators are saying here, salute to Usyk. Shout out to Danny, says, what did I say? 40% way too high. Go. Shout out to Danny. God, I've lost my train of thought now. Yeah, what I was saying is, shout out to Dubois for going for it, because there was only one way, in my opinion, he was going to win the fight, and that is to go for it and swing big shots, which is what he did. But that's always a gamble. If you go for it early, you increase your chances of winning, but you also increase your chances of being knocked out. Yeah? So Dubois gave it a go. You know, he did his thing. I think that's the best way he could have approached the fight. But Usyk was just too good. And please, no Partridge Trilogy fight next. Please no. Either retire or fight somebody else next. Don't give Partridge a shot. Shout out to Demon. He says, where's the eye gouge guy? Yeah. Abdi Fox. Abdi Fox going to be real quiet now. And Don Charles. Shout out to Danny. Says, domination by Usyk. Gum shield flew out of Dubois' mouth. Shout out to Striker for the super chat. He says, that right there is why Usyk is a different breed. I picked Usyk late And even that proved generous. Indeed, I picked Usyk on points, which obviously was very generous to Dubois. Very generous. Again, Usyk was tested more in the early going in this fight than he was in the first Dubois fight because Dubois was far more active and aggressive. But he drew Dubois' sting and knocked him out. So he did his thing. As somebody said there, Afro Soul said there, yeah, Usyk is just too effing good. He's just too effing good. Ayed says, where's Don Charles? Yeah, where's Don Charles and his son, Abdi? Let's see Don Charles and his son, Abdi. What they got to say for themselves now. Let's hear from Usyk. Being interviewed by Ade Oladipo. Usyk getting a massive round of applause from the Wembley crowd there. Minus the diehard Dubois fans who have all left. Shout out to D-Man for the super chat. He says, Usyk is the backyard killer. He is too. He's the real, he's like the quintessential road warrior, the ultimate road warrior. Belt Loops Matter says, who can seriously beat Usyk at the moment? Danny says, Usyk looked old but still outboxed and KO'd Dubois. I agree. Usyk did look old to me. He did look old. He's not as fast now, or as athletic or as sharp as he used to be. But as I was saying earlier on in the fight, Usyk doesn't rely on athleticism as much as a Muhammad Ali or a Roy Jones or somebody like that, because he's technically superior to those fighters. He's more technically correct. He's more textbook. And when you have sublime technical ability, you can go on for longer, right? Like Bernard Hopkins was an excellent technical fighter. That's why he lasted so long. He's the oldest world champion of all time, Bernard Hopkins, right? So Usyk said he wants to rest for 2 or 3 months. Please don't say you're going to fight Partridge again, Usyk, please. Oh, no. Don't say Partridge again. Chisora? No. Hell no. Joshua? No. Is he just picking UK fighters because he thinks the UK crowd want to hear it? Parker. Okay. That's a better fight. He's saying he can't decide now who's going to fight next. Wants to go back home. Okay. Usyk speaking in his language. Shout out to Ruben for the super chat. He says, AJ, Fury, Dubois, who had the most success in any fights? Fury had the most success out of those three against Usyk, in my opinion. But yeah, going back to what Danny said, Usyk looked old in this fight, but he's just so technically superior that he was able to get the win anyway and stop Dubois. Jackie Boy Johnson says, Dubois hype kind of flushed down the toilet. I don't think so. Dubois still very dangerous, you know, and the wins he had were the wins he had. It's just that Usyk's on another level. That's all. He's just on another level. Ayed says, but AJ faced the best version of Usyk. Okay, I agree with that. I would say Fury had the most success against Usyk, but Fury didn't fight the best version of Usyk, in my opinion. AJ did in the first fight. I think that was the best version of Usyk I've seen, certainly at heavyweight. Okay, they're going to interview Dubois. Let's have a listen. Okay, somebody said, Turkey just said Usyk versus Atauma. Okay, I'm listening to what Dubois is saying here. Listen to him and Frank Warren, what they got to say for themselves. I don't see Don Charles hanging about. Okay, Don Charles is there. Listen to what he says. I have to laugh. I'm not laughing at Dubois. He gave it a go. I'm laughing at Don Charles. Don Charles telling Dubois, thank the audience, giving him instructions, you know, the wind-up toy business. They're all there. But where's Don Charles' son, Abdi? Frank Warren looking annoyed here. I mean, he's giving Usyk his props, but he's looking annoyed as you would expect. Because he's got damn near the entire heavyweight division and he still can't get somebody to dethrone Usyk. Happy? Is that a trolling him there? But you must be happy. He looks annoyed. Man signed damn near the whole heavyweight division and he still doesn't have the champion. Usyk's basically independent, right? He's self-promoted now. Not even Krasuk is there. And the boxing establishment does not like an independent boxer to be ruling the roost. They hate that. They hate it. They're control freaks. A shout to Danny, says, rather Atauma than Fury. I would rather maybe Parker or Caballel, but I'd rather Atauma than Fury, yeah. But Atauma wouldn't be my number one choice for Usyk next. I'd rather like Parker, Caballel, somebody he hasn't fought, if he chooses to go on, because my first choice would actually be for Usyk to retire. That's what my first choice would be. But if he does continue, I would say Parker or Caballel. Certainly not Partridge. To hell with Partridge. He's had enough bites at the cherry. Ruben says, shout out to Ruben for the super chat. He says, Dubois is good, but no survival skills when hurt. Yeah, there's no doubt about that. No survival skills when hurt because he's a fighter who sells out on attack. If attack doesn't work, again, kind of like a Mike Tyson, if attack doesn't work, he has nothing else. It's all or nothing, Daniel Dubois. He gave it a go. I give maximum respect to Dubois for giving it a go. So shout out to Ruben. Shout out to D-Man. He says, Eddie Hearn breaking the TV. He had Usyk. Indeed, Eddie Hearn is not the wisest boxing promoter out there, is he? He let an all-time great like Oleksandr Usyk slip through his fingers. Shocking. Shout out to Danny again. He says, before the KO, Usyk had Dubois stunned a few times. He did. He did in previous rounds. Remember, there was I think a left hand that Usyk landed at the end of one of the previous rounds that stunned Dubois. I think it was the end of the third, maybe. So Jackie Boy Johnson says Usyk would beat Parker easily. Usyk may well beat everyone easily, but I would rather see him fight people he hasn't fought before. Do you know what I mean? Rather than I'd rather see him fight people he hasn't fought before. And also, Joseph Parker is interim champion. Adja Caballel's interim champion as well. Those guys deserve a shot more than Itama does. Itama's still got to get past Dillian Whyte. I expect him to. I expect him to knock Dillian Whyte out, but you got to go in there and do it first, right? But yeah, I agree with what Vlad says there. Usyk should retire. Now, I think he should retire. No more fighting on. Just bow out at the top. Why keep pushing it? Do you know what I mean? To the point where somebody catches you with a random shot and stops you. Why keep pushing it? Just bow out now. You know? Just bow out now. You'll go down as one of the greatest of all time. It'd be such a shame for Usyk to carry on too long and get beat by somebody who couldn't have laced his boots in his prime. Do you know what I mean? Bow out now. Shout out to Matt for the super chat. He says, what's up with Don Charles treating Daniel like... Or what was up with Don Charles treating Daniel like an autistic kid on a leash? He was saying, say thank you. Maybe that's what Don Charles thinks he is. Maybe that's what Don Charles thinks he is. Shout out to Matt Borgerson every time. Somebody says Don Charles crying right now. Yep, Don Charles and his son Abdi in tears. King Khan says it doesn't sound like he will retire. I agree, it really doesn't. See, the thing about guys like Usyk is that he's such a competitor and he's so addicted to challenging himself. He might be one of them guys who won't quit until somebody makes him quit by beating him, you know? And that's my concern. That's my concern. I think he should bow out now and don't allow anyone who's lesser than him to tarnish his legacy by getting a win over an old man, you know? Shout out to D-Man for the super chat. He says, Don Charles reasserting dominance after the push. That could be what it is, right? Getting him back for the push after the fact. Yeah, that's another thing. I'm not sure if I mentioned it during the interview that Dubois did post-fight with Don Charles next to him. Don Charles was saying Dubois will be back better than ever and all this. But will Don Charles be in Dubois' corner after this? Will he get sacked by Stan, a.k.a. Dave Dubois? Shout out to Mike for the super chat. Big up Mike for the super chat. He says, cheers for the live. Thanks for the audience. Big up Mike every time. Foundation, OG. Big up Matt. He says, I don't mean to be disrespectful to Daniel, but I do think he has some cognitive issues. Just seems very one-dimensional emotionally and physically. I completely agree. And I said in the lead up to this fight that, in my opinion, Daniel Dubois is absolutely okay in a slugfest when he's landing his own shots consistently, taking shots consistently. As long as he's landed on the other guy, he won't lose heart taking shots. It's when he cannot land his own shots and he's getting hit, that's when he appears to just blow a fuse mentally and start to break down. And maybe we saw that again here, you know, because he just wasn't landing the clean shots that he's accustomed to landing against everybody else. Shout out to KO Boxing Vibe for the super chat. He says, maybe Deontay Wilder or Zhang could run the clock back and find a shot from the heavens to land on Usyk to put him out. It's a possibility, but I don't think it would be a guy like one of those. I reckon it would more likely be somebody a bit fresher than a Zhang or a Deontay Wilder. But it's possible. Heavyweight boxing. Shout out to the, what is it now? I'll just call you Storm. Shout out to Storm. He says, why should he retire? Miles ahead of anyone, even out of his peak. The Messi of football, if he wins 3 more elite level fights, he can be the pound for pound GOAT. Why retire? Because I don't think Oleksandr Usyk can beat everyone out there. I don't think he can. And the reason I say this is because of the fact I've watched boxing and paid particularly close attention to heavyweight boxing since the 1980s. And obviously, I watched a lot of 1970s boxing growing up on videotaping and documentaries and stuff like that. And boxing is just replete with these fighters who seemed invincible. They seemed at the top of the game. Nobody can beat them. So on and so forth. Generational great. He can continue for several more years. And those guys end up losing to somebody who couldn't have carried their jockstrap in their prime. I've seen that happen too many times. I do not believe Oleksandr Usyk could beat everyone in the heavyweight division right now. Let's say there are 10 dangerous guys, 15 dangerous guys. I don't think if he was to fight every one of them consecutively, I don't think he'd come out undefeated still. I don't see it. On any given night, at this weight class, somebody could land the right shot and end Usyk's reign. But, you know, especially with heavyweight boxing and at this age. So I wouldn't want to see that happen. Yeah, I don't think Usyk can gain as much by continuing as he could by retiring now. Yeah, but it's a gamble at the end of the day. Like any kind of gamble, it's risk reward. I don't think the reward is worth the risk by continuing. Personally, I think if he were to retire now, people are going to make the argument that he's a top 5 heavyweight of all time anyway, irrespective of the fact he doesn't have, 20 different heavyweights on his resume or 15, 17 different heavyweights on his resume. Because of the fact that he beat the elite guys and beat them well, people are still going to make that argument and people are going to hear that argument and agree with the argument. Do you know what I mean? I don't think in order to be considered top 5, in order for a lot of people to make that argument, that he needs to have another 3 more fights against them. I don't think he needs that. I think he can make the argument right now. I'm not necessarily saying I agree with it, but I'm saying a lot of other people would agree with it. I think he's reached the point of diminishing returns. Call it a day now, walk away now, and he will be the first heavyweight and only the second heavyweight in history to walk away undefeated. He's a unique champion, 2-weight world champion in cruiserweight and heavyweight. And actually, I've mentioned this before, you could argue that Usyk does have a deep heavyweight resume because, listen to this, in the 1990s or early 2000s? Well, actually, let's rewind before then. I was going to talk about when they changed the weight limit for cruiserweight. In the 1980s, they introduced the cruiserweight division, okay? Early 80s. You go back to the 1970s and earlier, a lot of the heavyweights back then were no bigger than the cruiserweights that Usyk was fighting. And so what that then means is if you wanted to, you could include Usyk's cruiserweight resume when you are weighing up his achievements next to the likes of a Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali wasn't beating people any bigger than the guys Usyk was fighting at cruiserweight. You see what I'm saying? So if you take that into account, you could actually argue, well, maybe Usyk's resume is comparable to an Ali when you factor in the cruiserweights, because the cruiserweight division didn't exist in the 70s, in the 60s. You see what I'm saying? So I think he's reached the point of diminishing returns. Just retire now, you know? Just retire now. You've done everything. You've proved your points. You're an all-time great. You're a legend. You're a unique champion. And nobody would ever talk about Rocky Marciano again if Usyk retires now undefeated. Nobody would ever talk. I've got nothing against Marciano, all right? But I don't personally think Marciano was like a top 5, top 10 heavyweight of all time at all. I think he benefited from being around in a very weak era. Oleksandr Usyk has been around in a much stronger era than Rocky Marciano was around in, I'll tell you that. Okay, and he's achieved what he's achieved at a much older age, done it in 2 weight classes. Nobody would talk about Marciano anymore. When they would talk in future about undefeated heavyweight champions, they'd literally just mention Oleksandr Usyk, or they'd mention him first and then Marciano was an afterthought because Usyk is just so much better fighter than Marciano. Anyway, that's my ramble over, but shout out to Storm for the super chat. That's my answer. Shout out to Matt for his super chat. He says, call it a hot take, but I can actually see Atama icing Dubois in less than 5. Well, I was actually saying that I think Atama could beat Dubois several fights back. Before the AJ fight, to be fair. It was before Dubois had done what he'd done to AJ. I was saying I think Atama can beat him now. Can beat Dubois now. It's a bold call, right? Because Atama hasn't fought anybody yet. But just from the eye test, that's what I think in my head. A shout out to President Brush for the super chat. He says, did Dubois perform better in the first, in your opinion? No, I don't think he did. I think he performed better this time. He went more rounds last time. He lasted to the 9th. But he was just getting outboxed the whole time. He wasn't putting Usyk under any kind of pressure. This time he gambled, and I think that's what he had to do to give himself a chance. The best chance of winning is just gamble. Go out there, all guns blazing, hit Usyk wherever you can hit him, and try and hit lightning in a bottle. He attempted to do that. It didn't work. That's always the gamble. When you're going in there against the master boxer who you cannot outbox, yeah, if you want to win the fight, there's no point sitting back like you did in the first fight. What's the point? You're definitely going to lose. If you attack him the way Dubois did, you might still lose, but you at least give yourself more of a puncher's chance. You see what I'm saying? So no, I think Dubois did better in this fight as long as the fight went on. Yeah? Dubois was far more dangerous and far more active in the under 5 rounds that this fight went than he was in the first 5 rounds of the first fight. So now I think Dubois did better or was more competitive round by round in this rematch than he was in the first fight. Let's just put it that way, even though he lasted longer first time. Shout out to President Brush. Shout out to AJ for the super chat. He says, Don Charles getting sacked before he makes it back to the dressing room. Dad swinging the axe. Stan Dubois, a.k.a. Dave, allegedly, according to Spencer Fearon, the Juju man, surely not happy. Will he be giving Don Charles his P45, his marching orders? Shout out to Matt for the super chat. He says, I saw a decline in Usyk from this performance, to be honest. So did I. Somebody else mentioned that in the live chat. I think it was Danny. Usyk looked old in there. He did look old in there. Old in there, but still good enough to beat Daniel Dubois, which speaks to how great Usyk is and how sublime, his technique is. Shout out to everybody locked in right now, listening to the stream. We've got 1,000 concurrent viewers, 217 likes. If we can get the likes up, I'd really appreciate it. I like to keep the likes on these streams at least 50% of the viewership ratio. So if all you guys can just take a second to stick a like on this stream, it'd be much appreciated. Thank you in advance. Big up everybody locked in. Hopefully you're enjoying the commentary and the post-fight analysis. Big up. Stormy says he KOs Parker in Atama. He's the pound-for-pound GOAT. Pound for pound GOAT, no. Maybe you mean all-time great. Pound for pound would mean greatest fighter in any division of all time. Not pound for pound GOAT, no. But if he KOs Parker and Itama, I mean, Itama doesn't really do much for his legacy as things stand right now because Itama hasn't done anything. If he was to go in there and beat Parker and Caballero, that would mean more, in my opinion, than beating Itama because Itama hasn't proved anything yet. He's a lot of potential. I think Itama's the next... I'm saying Itama goes on to be a world champion, yeah? But he hasn't proven what Parker's proven yet. He hasn't proven even what Caballero's proven yet. So as things stand, I mean, if Usyk was to beat Itama and then Itama went on to have a great career, then yeah, it would stand Usyk's legacy in better stead. But as things stand right now, the way we can see things right now, the better wins for him would be Caballero and Parker. But shout out to Storm again for the super chat. Shout out to Surviving Sobriety. He says, fight Derek again and retire. Derek deserves it. Hell no. Hell to the no, no, no. I don't want to see him fight Derek Chisora again. Hell no. Hell to the no, no, no. But shout out to Surviving Sobriety. Big up Chili B for the super chat. He says, thanks for the live, boss. Don Charles is a fiddlin' Benz. In fact, Don Charles is a chiseler. Don Charles is a chiseler. Big up Chili Beef. Shout out to Ocean Blue for the super chat. He says, let's see Abdi challenge Team Usyk now. I think not. Yeah, Abdi was coming with all the big talk before the fight about gouging eyes out and all this carry on. Let's see if he's still on it now. See if Abdi's still on it. Abdi, the son of Don Charles. Yeah, I'm calling him Abdi. His AKA is George Fox, but I reckon he's really Abdi. Shout out to Job. Long time, my guy. Says Parker can beat Usyk. Okay, that's a big call. Let's see if the fight happens. Parker certainly got a lot more, speed than Daniel Dubois, I would say. In his hands, at least. Dubois got pretty quick feet. Shout out to my bro from Ireland, whose name I always forget how to pronounce. Please, please forgive me. There are so many people who tune in. Shout out to my bro from Ireland. He says, long time, no chat hat, man. We will now see Usyk versus Parker surely. Will be a firefight. Would you want to see it? Respect from Ireland, brother. And big up every time, my Irish guy. Yes, I would like to see it. Because Parker deserves it. Parker has earned his shot. He's interim champion right now. So if Usyk is to continue, it has to be Parker or Caballero as far as I'm concerned in terms of meritocracy. Has to be Parker or Caballero. Has to be. Big up for the super chat. Big up the Irish crew. Shout out to Storm again. He says, Usyk, the favorite versus any heavyweight in history aside from Lewis. I can dig it. I can dig it, bro. It's fantasy matchups are all based on opinion and stuff like that. I don't think it's ridiculous to say that. I can dig it. I mean, I might have been, certain people might have wanted to burn me at the stake a few live streams back when I was asked who would win out of Muhammad Ali and Oleksandr Usyk, and I said Usyk. Now, Muhammad Ali had a better resume, maybe. Certainly a lot more fights, but as I said earlier on, you could actually, in today's world, count a lot of Muhammad Ali's fights as cruiserweight fights. But if you count them as heavyweight fights, yeah, Ali's got a much deeper resume than Oleksandr Usyk. But styles make fights. And if you ask me, I'd go with Usyk over Ali in a styles make fights style matchup. Call me a heretic. It doesn't mean you have to rank Usyk higher than Ali historically on resume. Probably not. But in terms of a style matchup, I'll go with Usyk. Shout out to Alexander Sankey for the super chat. He says, the best heavyweight of our generation, and he's only had 8 heavyweight fights. And that's the thing. That's the downside of Usyk's resume. 8 heavyweight fights. and look at the run, there are 3 rematches in there. You know, that's the problem. That's the problem. 3 rematches. 3 unnecessary rematches. Well, at least 2 unnecessary rematches as far as I'm concerned. But shout out to Alexander. Shout out to the Celtic Magician. Shout out to Swaggins for the super chat. He says, Usyk did more than all these doctors showing you how to... Yeah, you guys are going to get me cancelled out here reading some of these super chats. Yo, you guys are trying to get me cancelled out here. I nearly read it as well. I was nearly caught off guard by that super chat. Man nearly caught me off guard and I read the whole thing. I got the stream taken down. Oh dear. Somebody in the stream the other day said that Daniel Dubois is weaponized. Yeah, the word that Swaggin said at the end of his super chat there. Weaponized ism. That's crazy. Oh dear, oh dear. You guys really like keeping me on my toes, don't you, with these comments, bro? At least we're not talking about who would you rather sleep with. Because you're really killing me with those comments, right? People always want to bring up Greta Thunberg. Who would you rather sleep with, Maggie Thatcher or Greta Thunberg? Usually getting super chats like that. Thomas Powell says Maggie. Apparently Maggie was a goer, to use an old British expression. Maggie was a bit of a goer when she was young. I'm not even joking. Read up about Maggie Thatcher. They say that she was like, you know, a sketel, a Jezebel. When she was a young girl growing up, young in her 20s or whatever. You know? Some Jezebel. All right, we're getting some sadistic comments coming in here. Noise says Greta has a decent rack. Sonia Fowler, see, that was another one of the who would you rather that somebody came with. Was Sonia Fowler or Greta. Greta, I think, is like in her early 20s now. Okay, Mockbill says Maggie was on orgies. I won't be surprised, to be honest. Shout out to Arco for the super chat. It says, how many of Usyk's titles were won in backyards? Maybe all of them? Did he win all of them in backyards? He certainly beat Breedis in the backyard. He beat, I think, Glowacki in Poland. That was Usyk's first world title, was Glowacki in his backyard. Breedis was in the backyard. Did he fight Gassiev in Russia? Yeah, maybe it was all of them. That's crazy, right? All of his world titles were picked up in the other guy's backyard. That's crazy. Fight Sport Talk says Joshua and Fury in Saudi. That's, well, not Joshua, because he'd already got Joshua's belts in the first fight off him, and that was in London. But yeah, I guess Fury, the WBC belt of Fury was in Saudi. He didn't get that in Fury's backyard. Big up for the super chat. My Irish bro again says, why would Usyk bother fighting Conjob Fury again? I agree. Why would he bother fighting him? It's really just a money fight, you know? I don't know why he would give Fury the opportunity again. And Fury is a fantastic fighter. I don't want to have any new listeners get the wrong end of the stick with regards to my view on Tyson Fury. I think Tyson Fury is a fantastic fighter. But unfortunately, he's not as good as he wants the public to believe he is. And so he bridges the gap between how good he wants the public to believe he is and how good he actually is with lies. He fills that gap. He tries to bridge that gap with lies. That's the problem I've always had with him. But yeah, why should Usyk fight him? I hope Usyk doesn't fight him again. I'll be critical of Usyk, to be honest with you, if he fights Tyson Fury again next. Fury needs to earn the title shot. Needs to earn it. Somebody said, what would your approach be to chirps in Greta? To not do it at all. That's what my approach should be, bro. It's the stuff of nightmares. Literally the stuff of nightmares. Let me change the graphic on screen here. Forward it to Wembley. There we go. Shout out to Ocean Blue for the super chat. He says, I admire Usyk's run, but if he did fight Partridge next, he should be stripped of all belts. Yeah, I would agree with that. And what's going to happen with the belts? Because the mandatories are overdue. Even if he doesn't fight Partridge next, I think Usyk needs to lose some of them belts. I think so. Because the mandatories are overdue. As great as Usyk is, as great as he's been for boxing, as great as he's been for the heavyweight division, the mandatory conveyor belt should not be held up any longer because of all these flipping rematches. So I think Usyk needs to lose some of them belts. Let some younger fighters, you know, the Caballos and the Parkers of the world, fight for him. Shout out to Storm for the super chat. He says, Hatman, every boxer in history at the apex of their powers, who do you think is the GOAT? My pick is Roy Jones Jr. Reflexively, I would agree with you. But I should probably spend more time really contemplating that. What I can say is I lived through Roy Jones in his prime, and he was the most phenomenal athletic talent in a boxing ring I've ever seen. Literally Neo in the Matrix. It was ridiculous. He was the closest thing I've seen in a boxing ring to a prime Michael Jordan on a basketball court. It's like when Jordan was at his peak and he was on that court, it was like it wasn't even fair how much better he was than everybody else. Do you know what I mean? Just the way he would dominate games by himself, seemingly. And Roy Jones was like that during his prime years. It's like, this ain't even fair. So, yeah, reflexively, I'll probably say I agree with you. Roy Jones, at the apex, at the peak of his powers, he's like the most dominant fighter I've seen. Not just in terms of wins and wins over very good or great fighters, but the way he won, you know? Shout out to David Smith for the super chat. He says, does this now debunk the theory that the way to beat Usyk is to rush him? Dubois got folded in half as soon as he threw caution to the wind. Well, no, it doesn't debunk the theory at all because people have tried to box Usyk and that doesn't work either. In fact, more people have tried to stand off and box Usyk than have tried to rush him. We've only had two people really rush Usyk at heavyweight. Chisora and Dubois in the second fight. right? So most people have tried to stand off and box with him, and it hasn't worked. Dubois didn't manage to successfully rush Usyk in this rematch, but that's one fighter. It doesn't necessarily mean a different fighter can't use those tactics successfully, especially against an aging Oleksandr Usyk, as other people have pointed out in the chat, and I agree with him. Usyk looked old in there to me. Even though he's still got that fantastic technique to fall back on. But I was saying from quite early on in the fight, Usyk looks slower than he's looked in previous fights. Slower than he did in the first Dubois fight. His movements are more old manish now than youthful. Do you know what I mean? And when you start looking like that, even with the sublime technique he has, you're living on borrowed time. Okay, Dubois didn't manage to do it. He gambled, and I think that's what he had to do to give himself the best chance. But if somebody else gambles in that way, maybe they get the job done. Yeah, Dubois is not like the only guy who can be dangerous on the front foot. So that's what I'd say. Big up David Smith for the super chat. Shout out to Ibrahim. He says, Usyk's accuracy is on another level. I believe that was the difference between Dubois being hit by other heavyweights. Top 5 heavyweight for me. Yeah, Usyk's accuracy is fantastic. Very good accuracy. Even when he's hitting you with what seem like relatively light shots, he's hitting you on those pressure points on the chin and on the temple. Do you know what I mean? He doesn't scuff shots when he lands clean, as Mike Tyson used to say, on the vital areas. So it's a very astute observation there. Accuracy from Usyk, not just in terms of landing, but where he lands. You know? He's landed on your chin. He's landed on your temple. He's hitting you on the eye and stuff like that, you know? Very accurate. And accuracy, of course, contributes to the effect that a punch will have on you. It's not just the brute force behind it. It's how pinpoint and where the shot is landing on the head or on the body. So shout out to Ibrahim for the super chat. East Midlands Fight Fan says he's hitting harder than it looks. Undoubtedly. Yeah, undoubtedly. I mean, I was one of the relatively few people going into the first Fury fight who was saying in all my videos in the run-up to that fight that Oleksandr Usyk can hurt Tyson Fury. Absolutely he can. He can hurt him and he can drop him. I said that in many, many videos leading up to the first fight. And the reason I said that is because, well, Tyson Fury's been dropped by Nevin Pikage. Not a puncher. Steve Cunningham, not a puncher. Right? If these guys are dropping him, why wouldn't Usyk be able to drop him? Usyk's accurate, athletic, and he hits hard enough. He's not feather-fisted. Yeah, the left hand that he landed on Dubois' chin was a beautiful shot. I look forward to watching the entire fight back, the 4 and a bit rounds back, on Monday when Turkey uploads it to his YouTube channel in 4K. Big up Turkey Al Sheikh for the fast uploads to his YouTube channel and to the Ring magazine channel in terms of full fights. Shout out to Relatively Comprehensive. He says, easy Hatman, unrelated, but who do you think would have won if Fury and Hay fought when they were supposed to back in the days? I've been asked that question a few times in the past. I can't remember what answer I gave then. But knowing now what we know about David Hay's physical condition, because remember, he pulled out of the Fury fight and he didn't fight again for years. And he came back and fought Jurjai and Demori and Tony Bellew. I suspect David Hay was breaking down physically even then going into the Fury fight. So I actually would have picked Fury, looking at it retrospectively. At the time, I think I might have been picking David Hay. But again, Hay pulled out of that fight and then he was out for years. And we were speculating as to why. I think now it's pretty clear his body was mashed up. He was having all kind of surgeries and all this type of business. And Tyson Fury was a young, upcoming, hungry fighter. So I reckon probably Tyson Fury. Shout out to Relatively Comprehensive for the super chat. Big up D-Man. He says, Usyk saved us from the Wilder Fury BS. He did too. He did too. And that's why Tyson Fury was looking to avoid Usyk. There's an interview which you can still watch on YouTube now. It's still floating about. It's from 2020, where Tyson Fury, this is before Usyk fought Joshua, and Tyson Fury says, words to the effect of, I've got no interest in fighting Oleksandr Usyk. Nobody knows who he is. He is basically outside of the Anglosphere, and the Anglosphere is where all the money is, so I'm not interested in that guy. And the interviewer then said, what if he beats AJ? And Fury said, even if he beats AJ, and obviously AJ was unified champion, I've still got no interest in fighting him. Fury said that back in 2020. Why did he say it? All of the stuff about there's no money in it and he's outside the Anglosphere and nobody knows it, that was all a bunch of BS. He was saying he had no interest in fighting Usyk back then, even if he beats AJ, because he knew how good Usyk was. That's why he was saying it. Man's a joker. I can only surmise that Happy Holmes is a Luke Partridge fanboy. Tyson Fury doesn't deserve another crack at Usyk. He got beat twice, fair and square. Enough is enough. He needs to go. I don't need to watch the fights back, Happy Holmes. Oleksandr Usyk outlanded Tyson Fury in both fights, not just according to CompuBox, but also according to Jabba. So don't be one of these delusional Tyson Fury fanboys clutching at straws. Stop it. Partridge fanboys in full effect. Shout out to D-Man. He says, that sounds like the PBC cult talking points. Big up D-Man. Shout out to Ibrahim for the super chat. He says, let's please get Usyk a fight in Ukraine if he doesn't retire. Man fights everywhere but Ukraine. Well, there's still a conflict going on over there. I can't imagine it'd be very safe. So a lot would need to change in that neck of the woods to make a fight over there viable. I agree with Ayed. Usyk needs to retire. Walk out on top, you know? Because, again, I've lived long enough to see so many fighters who were seemingly at the top of their game and everybody was saying there's no one in the division that can beat them. And they just got too greedy and went on for too long and somebody did beat them. Somebody who, in most cases, couldn't have laced their boots in their prime. I don't want to see that happen to Usyk. Shout out to 4Fox for the super chat. He says, the Usyk Marciano talk is like Calzaghe Otka. Yeah. Sven Otka retired undefeated like Calzaghe did, but Calzaghe had a far more impressive career and was a far more talented fighter. Shout out to Bobs for the super chat. This Caballel is Usyk's toughest fight now, in my opinion. Defensively minded and good body shots. Usyk's jabs. Parker to the body, then cracks him upstairs like Fury. Okay. So Bobs wants to see Caballel get the shot. So do I. I mean, again, I keep saying this, but just in case anyone else is tuning in right now, my preference would be for Usyk to walk away at this stage. Just retire. But if he's going to continue, Anchit Caballel deserves his shot. Yeah? He deserves his shot, as does Joseph Parker. So there's some mandatories to take care of there if Usyk keeps hold of those belts. Zayden says he does need to retire, but don't believe he will. Yeah, I reckon you're right. He certainly didn't sound like he wanted to retire. He's just taken out a 27-year-old, hard punching, in good form Daniel Dubois in 5 rounds After that type of victory, it's only going to spur him on, isn't it? It's only going to spur him on. That's the thing. A guy like Usyk is addicted to challenges. Totally addicted. Lives for the challenge. Shout out to Barikwa for the super chat. Fight Parker, maybe Caballero just retire. Hear, hear. That's what I'm saying. Big up. Barikwa. The super chat. East Midlands Fight Fan says Usyk is getting better. I disagree. I don't think Usyk is getting better. I don't think he is. He stopped Daniel Dubois earlier this time, yes. But that's partly because of the way Dubois fought. Dubois gambled on trying to take Usyk out. And in doing that, he expended a lot more energy and got hit a lot more cleanly. So I don't think it was a matter of Usyk was better this time. It's just that Dubois gave him more opportunities because he was more aggressive. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So I actually think Usyk is deteriorating. He's deteriorating. Shout out to Actors Crib for the super chat. Yes, Ibrahim, he says, that's the sickness you were talking about before, Hatman. Some fighters just don't know when to hang it up, and it can be their worst enemy. Because the thing is, these successful fighters do not get to where they are by listening to naysayers, by listening to people who say, oh, you don't want to take that risk, oh, you don't want to do this, you don't want to do that. They don't get to where they are by listening to that kind of stuff. Yeah? But at some point, Father Time is going to catch up with them. And when Father Time catches up with them, they're going to continue not listening. Right? Because they've learned to trust themselves and learned to trust their own judgment. When Father Time catches up with them, they're saying to themselves, well, my judgment was always proven right in the past. I'm going to continue trusting it now. But Father Time really is undefeated. You know, there's always going to come a time when these guys get old, sometimes overnight. And D-Man cites the perfect example. I was around for a prime Roy Jones. The Roy Jones who went up to heavyweight, he was actually past his prime. And we know that now looking back. He was in his mid to late 30s at the time when he went up and fought John Ruiz, became heavyweight champion. Bear in mind, Roy Jones fought as low as 154 in his career. Then he's up at heavyweight beating John Ruiz, and we're thinking this guy literally is Superman. Incredible, right? A couple of fights later, he gets iced in 2 rounds by Antonio Tarver. That's how quickly it can happen. I've seen it before. Yeah? You'd never have imagined that the great Roy Jones, Superman, who beat John Ruiz and actually already beat Antonio Tarver the fight previous, outpointed him over 12. You'd never imagine in the Tarver rematch you'd go and get iced in 2 rounds. That's how quick a fighter who seems like they're invincible can be vanquished. I've seen it so many times in the past, and that's why I want Usyk to retire now. Shout out to Bobs for the super chat. He says, Usyk has looked flat-footed at times since stage A2. I agree. He is more flat-footed now. Not as fast now. Steve Donner says, Usyk got a 2-pound haircut for this fight. He can't be doing with it. Yeah, normally he's got quite a neat trim. But yeah, he did come out looking a bit shabby in the Barnett department. Shout out to Storm for the super chat. He says, do you agree Roy Jones Jr. is as talented as Mayweather and Pacquiao? Technically, he's not as good as either of those guys in terms of his technique, his boxing fundamentals. He's not as good as Mayweather or Pacquiao. Athletically, he was more impressive than the pair of them, pound for pound. Obviously, those guys are faster than him because they're smaller. and, fast for their own weight class. But pound for pound, the things that Roy Jones could do in his weight classes, Pacquiao and Mayweather couldn't do those things. The gap in athleticism between Roy Jones and his opponents was far bigger than the gap in athleticism between Mayweather and his opponents or Pacquiao and his opponents. It was cartoonish. It was freaky, the gap in athleticism that Roy Jones had in his prime versus even someone like a prime James Toney. So Roy Jones was more athletically gifted than Pacquiao or Mayweather, but he wasn't as technically sound at all, particularly as a Mayweather, who was very, very technically sound. Boricua says, Usyk has the best technique I've seen, even better than Mayweather. I can't say that it's a ridiculous comment. I'm not saying I necessarily agree, but it's reasonable to say that because you look at Usyk technically and everything is done correctly. Everything is done correctly. Like, which part of Usyk's game can you say, oh, he does this wrong and he does that wrong? Everything is done correctly. And that really speaks to his obsessive mindset. Usyk's one of these guys who's obsessive. Totally obsessive. I'm sure Oleksandr Usyk is his own worst critic, his own biggest critic. You don't get to be as technically proficient as he is unless you are extremely critical of yourself. He's constantly looking at his own performances and saying, I can get better. I did this wrong. I did that wrong. I did the other wrong. I was half an inch out on this and half an inch. You know what I mean? He's obviously got some kind of obsessive mindset where he always is trying to refine his technique to complete and total sublime perfection. Shout out to Arco for the super chat. He says, Stan Dubois is going to buy a live chicken in the morning with Don Charles in mind. So Arco is alluding to the juju, the alleged juju of Stan Dubois, the dark arts, as some people call him. Encircled says, I'm sure Usyk is disgusted with most of his performances. Yeah, probably. He's that obsessive about being perfect that there probably isn't any of his performances that he likes. Yeah. Man's literally a perfectionist. Shout out to Storm for the super chat. He says, do you agree Usyk is a top 10 overall talent ever? At heavyweight, definitely. If you're talking about all weight classes, it's much more difficult to say. And how do you define talent? Are you just talking about his overall ability? Or are you talking more specifically about natural talent, like natural ability? Because people have got different ways to define talent. But for me, he's definitely an all-time great heavyweight. Even based on resume, I want to say an all-time great heavyweight. Top 10. But pound for pound in any weight class is probably a stretch to say he's all-time great pound for pound in any weight class. Shout out to Ibrahim for the super chat. He says, Usyk is definitely obsessive. He started boxing at 15, which is late compared to some fighters, and his head and shoulders above. There you go. Yeah, a few years later than most fighters. But still relatively young, 15. But yeah, in my opinion, he's an obsessive type. Totally obsessed with perfecting the boxing technique. Usyk is the man. He's the guy. He's the daddy. He's conquered boxing, conquered the heavyweight division. Conquered all the British heavyweights. Done them right up. Frank Warren looked put out. Let's be real. Frank Warren looked put out in that post-fight interview. He gave Usyk his props. He couldn't do anything else but, right? But he did not look like a happy camper in that post-fight interview. And that's why I had to laugh when Adeola Depot said, "You must be happy, Frank." And I was like, happy? Can you not see the look on his face? Frank Warren definitely was not happy in that post-fight interview. He was fuming. To use the old expression, he was screwing. Steven said, 78 claiming Usyk needs to face Wilder to be considered top 20 after Dubois. What? Someone else says he was trolling. I hope he's trolling. Shout out to Bobs for the super chat. He says Spencer Brown celebrating like mad ringside when Usyk KO'd Dubois. Go back and watch. Shows financial figures in boxing have no loyalty. Well, Spencer Brown doesn't have anything to do with Daniel Dubois. And he's very close to Frank Warren, obviously. But he's not Dubois' manager. And he doesn't have anything to do with him business-wise, as far as I'm aware. Was he backing Dubois before the fight? Maybe that was like a thing for the cameras to appear to be patriotic. I don't know. Oh, wow. Ricky says it looked like Francis Warren was as well. I'll definitely have to check that out then. Shout out to XMB45 in the chat. Yeah, I can't wait for Turkey to upload this full fight in HD on Monday. So I want to go back and dissect it, not just what's going on in the ring, but even in the crowd. I always find that stuff interesting. Seeing the reaction of people in the crowd. It's like when Hamza Shiraz knocked out Edgar Berlanga. When I watched the fight back, I noticed lions in the camp. Tunde Ajayi and Anthony Yard. And Anthony Yard proper like jumped out of his seat when Shiraz dropped Berlanga the first time. He's like, ooh. It's funny seeing their reactions. Tunde didn't even react. Tunde was like Turkey al-Sheikh. You know, Turkey barely reacts. Somebody will literally get their head knocked clean off in front of Turkey and he'll just like sit there with his arms folded. He doesn't even flinch. Exactamundo says, Hatman, are you streaming a watch along for the Manny fight? We shall see. If I can be bothered to actually watch it, we'll see. So I've got a few bits and bobs to do, but we'll see. I won't guarantee it. Shout out to Storm again. He says, why not top 10 of all time pound for pound, ability, not resume? I don't really like doing top 10s in ability rather than resume because it's too subjective. You know, so that's why I stay away from pound for pound lists in general. You will very rarely hear me talk about pound for pound lists. I don't like because it's an abstract concept. You know, when you're comparing fighters pound for pound, it's like, well, how do you compare Usyk to Mayweather? Because in an abstract fight between the two, how tall would you make Mayweather and how tall would you make Usyk? Do you know what I mean? It's just too much of an abstract concept for me to really entertain. If other people want to do it, that's cool. But I've never really been big on pound for pound lists, even current pound for pound lists, because of how abstract it is. So, you know, if you're basing it on who would beat who in a fantasy matchup, if the fighters were all the same size. So, yeah, I tend to more base these things on resume And on resume, I couldn't put Usyk top 10 of all time, pound for pound. No, I couldn't do that. Heavyweight, maybe, yeah, but all time, no. But shout out to Storm for the super chat. D-Man says, for example, heavyweight KOs are more likely. And that's another reason that I think Usyk will be well advised to retire now rather than carry on. He's in the land of the giants. He could be soundly outboxing somebody and gets caught with a right shot by a young guy, and that's all she wrote. Why allow, by fighting on, any chance for that to happen? Shout out to Arco for the super chat. He says, what would happen to boxing when or if the Saudis are done in the sport? Really, a legendary run Turkey is on. Never seen anything like it. What would happen to boxing? Boxing would carry on. It would just go back to the model that existed before. Boxing would carry on. People are always going to want to see who the best fighters are, who the best boxers are. So boxing would carry on. It would maybe go back to the dark old days of, fights getting dragged out for a ridiculously long amount of time for years in order to build the fight, right? We're sick of it. During the Mayweather era, you were always hearing that. Oh, the fight needs to be built. And the Mayweather fanboys were always justifying fights being built. No, don't have them fight now when they're both world champions and they're both in their mid-20s. No. Wait until they're both 35 and we've built the fight. What a load of nonsense. But because of the economic model, so many boxing promoters and fighters themselves thought that was the best way to go about it in order to maximize revenue. But what actually would happen is that the fights would go stale, people would lose, and you get a subpar product when they eventually did meet, if they ever met at all. Case in point being Mayweather-Pacquiao. Yeah, let the fight marinate. That's it, striker. Let the fight, you'd always hear that, let the fight marinate. Oh my God, man. No, let's not let the fight marinate. Let's strike while the iron's hot. That's what keeps excitement in boxing alive, is when you strike while the iron is hot. All that damn marinating. What is this, a flipping cook-off? Yeah, I've heard a lot of the nonsense that Luke Partridge, a.k.a. Tyson Fury's been saying. Everyone thinks I won. I've watched the fight 250 times. All Tyson Fury is doing is trying to avoid having to earn his next title shot against Usyk. That's all he's doing. That's all he's trying to gaslight people. And that's why he's also saying that Jake Paul knocks Anthony Joshua out. He's saying that because he doesn't want the public to put any pressure on him to fight AJ. Because as washed up as AJ is, Tyson Fury could not live with the idea of not being seen as at least the number 2 heavyweight in the world. So he doesn't want to take any risks at all at this stage. He's hanging on by a thread to his ridiculous claim he's number 1 heavyweight in the world. He knows a lot of people don't buy that, despite what he claimed, what he says. He's thinking, okay, well, maybe they think I'm number 2. If he were to lose to an AJ, that would put Tyson Fury down at what, 6, 7, 8 in the world? He doesn't want to take that kind of risk. And I personally would pick Tyson Fury to beat AJ if they were to fight right now. But Fury clearly thinks there's a risk associated with it, a tangible risk, a relatively substantial risk. And that's why he's trying to diminish AJ in the minds of the public. Jake Paul would knock him out. What do I need to fight him for? You see, that's what Fury's doing. That's what he's doing. Steve Donner says, watch it 250 times to see that I won. We got Ibrahim. That's right. I've been studying Tyson Fury. I know how he thinks. I know all his tricks and his games. Yeah. Definitely can't read that guy like the back of my hand at this point. Luke Partridge ain't pulling the wool over my eyes. Exactly, as Zayden said there. Yeah, man, it's a huge payday to make him fight AJ. He just can't lose to AJ. Anyone but AJ. I mean, he has been absolutely trashing AJ for years. Stiff bodybuilder, chinny, can't fight. It's an easy victory for me. All this stuff. The only risk Tyson Fury wants to take right now is to come out of retirement, quote-unquote retirement, and fight Usyk. That's it. He's not interested in even fighting a Kabayel right now. A few years ago, he was talking about fighting Kabayel. He's not interested right now. He's not interested in Hrgovic. He's not interested in Itama. He's not interested in anybody unless they're a complete pie. He might be interested in somebody like a Pulev, right? There's a little tune-up. But in terms of people that can punch back hard, and they're still close enough to their prime, Fury's not interested in fighting anyone like that. Because if he loses to those guys, not only can this myth that he's created that he's the #1 heavyweight in the world, not only would that be completely destroyed for good, but he wouldn't even be regarded as the #2 heavyweight in the world if that happened. So no, he ain't trying to fight AJ or any of these other guys unless they offer him something just ridiculous in terms of a purse, something obscene. Shout out to D-Man for the super chat. He says, Fury really has a chip on his shoulder with AJ. He actually does. And it's a strange thing because AJ is so washed up at this stage. Why would AJ even be in his thoughts anymore? Why would he be trying to still diminish AJ? You know, chip on his shoulder combined with Fury trying to deflect. That's basically what he's doing. He's trying to create a distraction, a diversion, so that there's no momentum behind, a fight between himself and Joshua. So the public doesn't start clamoring for that fight and demanding the fight. He's trying to shut it all down before it starts by saying AJ should go and fight Jake Paul, and Jake Paul will probably knock him out. I mean, this is coming from a guy who went life and death with Francis Ngannou. The guy who went life and death with Francis Ngannou, who then in his next fight got iced by AJ in 2 rounds, he's trying to tell us that Jake Paul ices AJ. As washed up as AJ is, he's not losing to Jake Paul. And Fury knows it anyway. And I completely agree with what Yon said there. Francis would do unspeakable things to Jake, by the way. Pause. I even think that Ngannou would destroy current Wilder. I completely agree with regards to Jake Paul, right? Think about it. Anthony Joshua blasted Ngannou out in 2 rounds. Easy peasy. The guy who gave Tyson Fury hell and high water. Francis Ngannou beats Jake Paul right now. No problem. Obviously in MMA, but in a boxing match too. I'm telling you, Francis Ngannou beats Jake Paul for me all day long, twice on Sunday. I know styles make fights, right? Boxing is rock, paper, scissors, but Jake Paul is a decent novice. In terms of putting him in there with anyone even close to world level, even at cruiserweight, never mind heavyweight, forget about it. He just went 12 rounds with a totally washed up, over the hill Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., who was never that good to begin with. A guy who'd been stopped several times in the past, quit against Danny Jacobs, quit against Andre Fonfara years ago. Do you know what I mean? Jake Paul just went to 10 rounds, whatever it was, with that guy. Like, come on. He's clout chasing. Jake Paul's clout chasing. And there you go. Jake Paul lost to Tommy Fury. I mean, have we somehow forgotten that? There are people. You got Tyson Fury saying that Jake Paul chins Joshua. Meanwhile, his own brother Tommy, who he saw against Jake Paul as a 50-50, he beat Jake Paul. So what's he saying? That Tommy beats AJ as well? All right, peeps, gonna draw the curtain on this stream. Shout out to each and every one of you for locking in. Special shout out to those who don't. Oh, we got a final super chat here from Storm. He says, if Roy Jones Jr. retired post Ruiz, is he consensus GOAT? In my opinion, yes. So that's not consensus, obviously, that's my opinion. But I reckon the consensus would have been that Roy Jones was the GOAT if he'd retired at that stage. Yes, I reckon that would have been the consensus of maybe the majority of boxing writers and the public. Roy Jones is the classic example of the fighter who went on for far too long and totally tarnished his resume. Now, by subsequent generations, he's more known for being a punching bag. A guy who got chinned by Enzo Macronelli and Dennis Lebedev and all these others. Antonio Tarver, Glencoff Johnson, you know? Lost the rematch to Hopkins decades after their first fight. Those things are more fresh in the memory for most boxing fans these days. It's almost as if the prime Roy Jones years never happened, you know? But yes, he was so seemingly invincible at the time. I don't mean actually invincible. I'm talking about seemingly invincible. I'm talking about public perception. He was so seemingly invincible at the time that if he had retired post Ruiz, because it was seen as such a spectacular win, and it was spectacular, given the fact he'd fought as low as 154, then yeah, I reckon he may well have been seen as the consensus greatest of all time. So shout out to Storm for the super chat. Big up 4Fox for the £5 super chat. He says, hi Hatman, big fan of your channel for many years. Could you remind us of how Luke Partridge's real name was exposed? #1 boxing analyst on YouTube, in my opinion. Okay, so I first revealed this on a live stream, I want to say last year sometime, or was it late 2023? Either late 2023, early 2024. And basically there was a post on the Boxing Scene forum, right? Boxing Scene, a long-running boxing website. Actually, no, not the Boxing Scene forum, the Box Rec forum, excuse me. There was a post on the Box Rec forum, not Boxing Scene, all right? Box Rec forum. And this post was dating back to maybe somewhere between 2011 and 2013. So it was an old post. And I'm sure it was pre-Klitschko, right? Fury fought Klitschko when? 2015? 14, 15? So I think it was a pre-Klitschko post. And I took screenshots at the time and showed the screenshots on screen. And there was this guy in the forum who claimed to know John Fury personally, right? And had personal dealings with him. And it was a very, very long post. There was loads of detail in it. And he was giving these accounts of confrontations that he'd seen John Fury in, right? And one of them was with a boxer who I forget the guy's name. He was a black guy or mixed race guy who was a British middleweight fighter. And he asked John Fury to spar or something because the guy that he was supposed to spar with in the gym didn't turn up. John Fury was almost offended that he was asked to spar by this middleweight or super middleweight, whatever he was. And so it was a very heated spar. And this guy got the better of the spar. And John Fury got the hump and he was all, he got out the ring and he was shouting, "I'll come fight you outside. I'll fight you outside." They broke up the melee and the guy with his shirt off followed John Fury outside and said, "Yeah, fight me now. Let's do it, bare knuckle. Let's do it all in." Words to that effect, right? John Fury, according to this guy, got in his van and drove off. He went into loads of other detail about, he was more focusing on John Fury than Tyson Fury, yeah? It wasn't really that much about Tyson Fury. You just mentioned him here and there. It was more focusing on John Fury. Again, this is pre-Klitschko. So John Fury wasn't the character at that stage. If it weren't pre-Klitschko, it might have been just after pre-Klitschko. But I want to say it definitely wasn't any later than 2015, this post. You can probably still find it if you look for it on the boxing BoxRec forum. I want to say it was pre-Klitschko. He then said, "I swear this is true." And he was mentioning names, dates, and places. So he wasn't just telling stories. He was saying where these incidents were happening in certain parts of northern England. He was naming names of the people who were there, giving loads of detail. And one of the details he gave is that the family name of the Furies is not Fury, it's actually Partridge. He said, "I swear it's true, it's Partridge." So that's where the whole Partridge thing came from. Now look, at the end of the day, it's a post that somebody put up on the BoxRec forum. I can't verify any of the information. I can't verify that Partridge is actually the real Fury family name. But I feel like I've heard Peter Fury actually say that part of their family are called Partridges, have the name Partridge. I've watched a lot of Peter Fury interviews back in the days. And somehow that Partridge name rings a bell. I swear Peter Fury's actually admitted that before. Don't quote me, but I swear he has. But yeah, that's where the Partridge thing came from. And I keep repeating it because I know it winds up the Fury fanboys more than anything. And it just sounds funny to call him Luke Partridge. Okay, there we go. We got somebody in the comments saying with Grant. That's right. The guy was called Grant. Where is it? The sparring story is definitely true with Grant. And this guy had all the details about that sparring story. Where John Fury got pieced up by this middleweight in sparring and then, okay, Danny's saying they sparred in Bradford. There you go. They sparred in Bradford. But to me, it just had a ring of truth to it when I read it. I was like, I can see John Fury doing that. I can see him, trying to bully a smaller guy, getting mashed up by the smaller guy, and then saying, "I'll fight you out." That's just typical John Fury pathology. "I'll fight you outside. No, I was bad. I'll tell you the piece." The way John Fury carries on. And then the guy following John Fury outside and say, "Yeah, let's do it." And John Fury getting in his van and driving. I can see that happening. He's that type of character. He's that type of character. Shout out to Grizz D for the super chat. He says, "Hatman, what's the worst boxing take you've had? A fight that you loudly predicted would go one way but went the complete opposite way?" I can give you a couple. But probably the worst in terms of how certain I was that not only the guy would win, but win comfortably. One of the worst would have been picking Keith Thurman to beat Manny Pacquiao. I didn't see any way that Pacquiao was winning that fight. I didn't think he'd win by a random knockout. I didn't think he'd win on points. I just thought he was far too old and Keith Thurman would just handily beat him either on points or stop him late. I didn't think there was any way that Manny Pacquiao was winning that fight. So that'd be one of them. Shout out to Storm, Mr. Super Chat there. He says, if Bud stops Canelo in 5, it's a top 5 impressive win of all time. Yes. If Bud Crawford stops Canelo in 5, I mean, I don't want to, because I can't think of all the amazing wins that have happened throughout the course of boxing history right now off the cuff, okay? But it would certainly be a top 5 win in the past 25 years. I go that far. I remember enough of the past 25 years, I think. 30 years even, off the top of my head, to say, okay, yeah, Bud Crawford beating Canelo at this stage, jumping up all those weight classes and no rehydration clause, no catch weight. It'd be a fantastic win. Fantastic win. You know, better than Ray Leonard fighting Donnie Lalonde. So yeah, big up Storm for the super chat. Bud beating, I mean, not just beating Canelo, stopping Canelo. That'd be crazy. That would be crazy. I'd be shocked if that happened. A Crawford win is conceivable in my mind on points if he lands enough big shots to make it undeniable by the judges. It's conceivable. But Crawford stopping Canelo in 5? Not unless he cuts him. If such a thing were to happen and he was to stop Canelo in 5, I would be flipping shocked. I would be shocked. I'd be shocked out of my skin. Shout out to D-Man for the super chat. He says, if Bud stops Canelo, it will hit stardom. Yeah. Talk about an Indian summer for Bud in terms of popularity. Shout out to for Fox. Thank you for the detailed explanation. Yeah. Johnny Partridge and his son Luke Partridge. Indeed, Ibrahim says that would be crazy. It took Crawford 9 rounds to stop Spence, and that was a physically diminished Spence. Spence offensively was still a very formidable fighter when he fought Crawford, but he just couldn't take the same punishment post-crash. His body was reacting weirdly. His face was swelling up more quickly and all that kind of thing. Rep 2016 says, Dwyer will say Okolie can beat Usyk in his next vid. I'm sure Dwyer is going to be wildly impressed by Okolie's performance. As somebody said earlier on in the live chat, I didn't think it was a bad performance by Okolie. It wasn't scintillatingly exciting at all, but by his standards, it wasn't like the worst hug fest. Because we've seen horrific hug fest from Okolie in the past, like when he fought Chris Billam-Smith, when he fought Matty Askin. Shocking. This fight threatened to descend into a hug fest, but Lerena was sufficiently intimidated by the mid-rounds that Okolie didn't resort to the hug fest. Because Lerena gave him enough space that Okolie could just, keep his distance, peck and poke, and coast to a victory. Shout out to Outmatch in the chat. Big up Outmatch every time. Yes, my bro. All good here. How are you over there? Completely agree with James Walker. Okolie should have been disqualified against Matty Askin. Should have been disqualified against Chris Billam-Smith too. Shout out to Storm for the super chat. He says, Bud is in a unique situation. His resume is poor for his talent, but I think most would agree he has a decent chance versus anyone in history at 147 and 140. Yeah, that is kind of an interesting point you make there. It's not really his fault. It's just down to the fact that every division has peaks and troughs in terms of the amount of talent in it. And Crawford was around at a time at 140 and 147 where the talent wasn't that great. Wasn't that great. It's not like the 147, it wasn't the worst welterweight era ever, but a lot of the guys were on the downslide. Spence had seen better days. Even though Spence was still formidable offensively, couldn't really take the punishment anymore after the car crash. But I want to say at lightweight, he might have the best of all the divisions that Crawford was in. His wins at lightweight were probably the best historically, because he did beat Yuriorkis Gamboa, who was unbeaten. He did beat Ricky Burns, that was a solid win. These were not washed up guys. Do you know what I mean? But then again, at 140, he beat Victor Postal, who was a solid fighter. But yeah, I definitely take your point. Based on the eye test and our perceived, the level of talent that we perceive Crawford to have, he doesn't have the resume to match as talent, the talent that we think he has. So yeah, shout out to Storm for the super chat. Shout out to Arco for the super chat. He says Spence's musculature looked atrophied. Excuse me. Yes, atrophied post crash. He absolutely did. It definitely did. Yeah, his muscles looked old. As you age, your muscles don't look as full and they don't look as compact. They look more striated and not as full the older you get. The muscles even start to sag, So yeah, they look atrophied, definitely. They look atrophied. I was saying that when he fought Danny Garcia. I was like, his body looks weird post crash. He went through a lot of trauma, the body. Could have easily died. Shout out to Mr. Luca for the super chat. He says, what a night, what a fighter. Yeah, Usyk's the man. He's the daddy. He's the beast. He's the heavyweight of this era. And right now, he's the man in boxing, full stop for me. He's the man. He is the man. There's nobody in boxing right now who's killing it the way Usyk is killing it, bro. Usyk is killing it. And there's a point I forgot to make earlier on when somebody said Usyk is getting better. I don't think Usyk is getting better. I think he stopped Dubois earlier this time for two reasons. One, because Dubois fought more aggressively, which gave Usyk more opportunities to land clean. And also, Dubois expended his energy more because he was more aggressive. And number two, because Usyk, as other people have been saying, is actually better in rematches. He downloads data. So I don't think he's getting better as a fighter overall. I think he's slowing down significantly. But he'd been in with Dubois before. He knew all his moves. He's like got, people are talking about Dubois being on the spectrum. Usyk definitely isn't, but he's almost got a Rain Man type memory when it comes to boxing. You know what I mean? He's like Rain Man in there. He downloaded all the data, even though it was a couple years ago. He downloaded all the data about Daniel Dubois. He knew all the moves that Dubois makes. So he didn't have to learn Dubois second time around. He already knew him. Shout out to Storm for the super chat. He says, do you agree that Bud is all wrong for Floyd at 147? Not really. I think it's a very, very tight fight, that one. Last time somebody asked me this question, I said I think Mayweather would beat Crawford at 147, but it's so tight. On another day, I might say Crawford. Somebody who I think is genuinely all wrong for Floyd Mayweather at 147 or 54 would have been Thomas Hearns. Because Mayweather was not a good pressure fighter. Yeah, Mayweather was a very, very basic pressure fighter. If he had to get close to a guy with, much longer arms than himself, who knew how to use the reach and who was powerful, Mayweather just put his hands up in a peekaboo guard. He just walks forward throwing straight right hands. That's literally all he does. That's not going to work against Tommy Hearns, in my opinion. No way. 78-inch reach, quick hands, ridiculously powerful, piston-like jab. That's not working against Tommy Hearns, bro. That's not working. He get frozen on the outside and either soundly outboxed or knocked out. So I don't see it. But Crawford, because they're more similar in height, Crawford does have longer reach than Mayweather. Mayweather for me is a bit sharper than Crawford with the shots, faster. Crawford a bit more versatile. It's a tight fight. Funny enough, even though I'm slightly edging towards Mayweather beating Crawford, I would actually give Crawford a better chance against Hearns than I'd give Mayweather against Hearns, because styles make fights. It's rock, paper, scissors. But shout out to Storm for the super chat. Shout out to Simon Brandy for the super chat. He says, Usyk is like Neo from the Matrix. I know Kung Fu. That's right. Somebody at some point in this live chat just said that Usyk moves a lot and nobody seems to mention that. I don't know who he's been listening to, but everybody mentions Usyk's movement. Everyone mentions it. His foot movement, his head movement, and his hand movement. All these moving parts are what helped to break down his opponent psychologically. It was the similar thing with his one-time stablemate, Vasyl Lomachenko. Yeah? I mentioned all of this in the pre-fight film study that I did of the first Usyk-Dubois fight on my Patreon page. I was talking specifically about how Usyk confuses you and how he breaks you down and tires you out mentally during the course of a fight because there are so many moving parts. He's moving his hands, he's feinting, he's moving his head, he's moving his feet, and he's punching off all that movement. Yeah, so I don't know. I always talk about Usyk's movement, and most other people do. That's what Usyk does. He moves very, very well, and everything's moving. Feet are moving, head's moving, hands are moving, feinting, and he's punching, and he's coming in on angles, and he's doing all sorts. That's right, Mark Hash. Duke McKenzie was right again. Duke McKenzie was right again. And the thing I love about Duke McKenzie's predictions is that he's so firm in his predictions. You know, he never gives like a tentative prediction. He's always so firm in his predictions. He's always bang on. Well, not always, but you know, the vast majority of the time, Duke McKenzie's bang on. And he was bang on again here. Okay, the majority of people picked Usyk, but I was thinking it would be a more difficult fight. And it was more difficult in the first 5 rounds, but at the end of the day, he got Daniel Dubois out earlier. I was thinking it would go the distance. I didn't think Usyk would stop Dubois this time. I thought he would go the distance. Obviously, that was not the case. I was picking Usyk on points. That's right, Ocean Blue. McKenzie is picking Bud Crawford against Canelo. And there's quite a few people, like ex-champions and stuff like that, who are also picking Crawford over Canelo. There's quite... Drew McKenzie's not the only one doing that. There's quite a few of them picking Crawford. I think Malignaggi might be picking Crawford as well. Jackie Boy Johnson says, Duke McKenzie thinks or thought Tank was pound for pound number 1 though. Yeah, I saw him recently talk about Shakur Stevenson versus Tank, and he thinks that Shakur Stevenson beats Tank right now because of Tank's outside the ring issues. But he says prime for prime, he thinks that Tank would beat Shakur Stevenson. Who he thinks is pound for pound number 1 and all that kind of stuff, I don't particularly pay too much attention to because, as I said earlier on in the stream, pound for pound is such an abstract concept. There are so many variables. You don't know what people are basing, you know, the view that this guy's pound for pound on. It's abstract as hell, you know? If in a fantasy matchup, you're matching Tank up against Usyk. How tall do you make Tank and how tall do you make Usyk? What weight do you make Tank and what weight? Do you know what I mean? It's too abstract. So I don't really pay much attention to that. I just pay attention to Duke McKenzie's actual predictions for fights. Yeah. His actual predictions for fights are generally bang on the money. Shout out to Storm for the super chat. He says, Buds, adjustment, reach, power, switch hit, all wrong for Mayweather. All right. I hear you. He's more versatile than Mayweather, more dimensional. But Mayweather, very, very sharp, very accurate. Mayweather, shout out to James Clifford for the super chat. He says, get the lights up from Wembley Park Station. Big up. James Clifford trying to escape the hordes and make it home. Shout out James Clifford. Big up. Mayweather, again, not as dimensional as Terence Crawford, but very, very sharp. Very sharp eyes, lightning fast right hand when he lets it off. And if any of you are familiar with fighting games, Street Fighter, any kind of fighting game, right? Sometimes you have a friend or maybe a sibling who plays you at the game and they really don't know any moves. They know like one move, but they know that move well enough and they time that move well enough to be able to spam it and beat you time and time again. That's what Mayweather was like. He was like a guy that knew a few moves and did them so well that he could beat he did beat everybody who he faced during his career with those few moves. So I would agree he's not as dimensional as Crawford, but he could spam certain moves so well to beat you. And because he was sharp, one thing I'll say is Mayweather was a better athlete than Terence Crawford, in my opinion. And when I say athlete, I mean just more athletic. I know he can't do all the wrestling and all the other stuff that Terence Crawford does. Crawford's somewhat trained in other sports. But in a boxing context, Mayweather had faster hands. His punches were more crisply delivered. And he was just like a laser. That right hand was like a laser when he would throw it. Pinpoint laser. He'd throw it straight. And yeah, I edged towards Mayweather against Crawford. I edged towards him. But hey, it's a fantasy fight. Who knows? Unless we get a time machine sorted out, then it's all just speculation and conjecture, innit? All right, like a horror movie with a lot of false endings. This is the end of this stream now, I think. Unless we get some last-ditch super chats in, then I'll draw the curtain on the stream here. Shout out to each and every one of you for locking in, especially those who donated via super chat. Mr. Luca, Danny, Hiro Protagonist, Belt Loops Matter, D-Man. Who else we got here? Danny, Striker, Ruben, Matt Borgerson, of course, Mike, KO Boxing Vibe, Storm, President Brush, AJ, Surviving Sobriety, Chili Beef, Ocean Blue, Jop, my bro from Ireland, whose name I always forget how to pronounce. I'll call him Sead. It's spelled C-E-A-D, his surname. Sead. Alexander Sankey, Swaggins, Arco, David Smith, Ibrahim, Relatively Comprehensive, Four Fox, Bariqua, Bobs, Actor's Crib. I don't think I shouted him out, actually. Oh, no, I did. Shout out to Actor's Crib. What's that Actor's Crib like? Not sure I want to know. You know how Hollywood is. Depends on where the actor's from, I guess. Moros Man, shout out. Here's super chat. Is that everybody here? Four Fox, I've said him. Grizz D. Big up Grizz D. Mr. Luca. James Clifford. You joined us late. D-Man. Yes. So big up everyone. Salute, salute. We'll see if I do another stream later for Pacquiao. Isn't Tim Tszyu fighting as well tonight? So we'll see. No guarantees. But if there is one, I'm sure you know about it. If you're up watching it, you'll hear your phone buzzing or whatever for the notification. Yeah, and click the bell next to the subscribe button, because then you'll be notified when I go live. All right? Big up everyone for locking in. Been a great conversation as always. See you on the other side. I'm out.